Are we good? Are we back? Are we alright? Hello, hello! Okay, let me make... Is like the sound and the voice alright? Like, is it okay? Volume? My mic setup's a little weird, so there might be points where... Well, one, you're gonna hear a lot of background noise. Two, mic setup's a little weird. Yeah, because it's makeshift right now while I'm waiting for my new desk to get set up. Also very echoey in this room because there's absolutely no furniture. Yeah, I won't have any car noises here. I get random other noises because I'm now living in the city. But yeah, no car noises. It was very ASMR. Let me stuff on Discord. Okay, cool. I'm gonna just maybe do some drawing before we get started. How do I do this? I haven't streamed in like a month and I don't remember how to do this. Oh wait. Why like... Okay. Fade. How's the move? The move was really clean. Some plans changed like during the move. So it was kind of stressful for a little bit, but like I hired a moving company, which we were gonna do it all ourselves. But I hired a moving company to help me last minute, and they were super efficient. Like if you can spare the amount to like hire an actual moving company, like they did what would have taken like all day, and they got it done in like, I don't know. I mean, it was like 5 hours total, but most of it was the drive from the old place to the new place. So honestly, it was really smooth. I still haven't fully unpacked. As you can probably hear, my room is extremely echoey because I haven't unpacked any furniture. I actually just got my new desk, and some bookshelves today that I haven't felt the need to put together because it's IKEA furniture. So hopefully this room will be less echoey very soon. Was it expensive? I'd say so. Yeah, I think it was like $700. Because it was like a 5-hour day. It was like $700, and I also paid extra for them to get rid of some stuff too, to junk some stuff. But I was comfortable paying it because it was like, it was gonna be a lot of stress on other people to help me move, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna get someone else to do it. Yeah, I was comfortable paying it. And Peach is okay. Peach has been wild. She's like, I think she's actually like a cat, you know? She's actually like been exhibiting cat behaviors. We got here, she was scared for like 30 minutes, and then within 30 minutes she was like, let me out. I gotta get out of here. And she started exploring. She's been really chatty. Like, I think she's been really like, she's been living it up. I think she's been really enjoying being the only cat in the house. So she's been good. She's been very good. I feel bad because our old place had rugs and it had like, you know, other textures on the floor, but this is like the laminate hardwood. So she has been slipping and sliding all across the floor. But it's been, other than that though, I think honestly it's been pretty good. Hi everyone! Welcome to the stream. Yeah, we're back. We're doing stuff. Sorry for the delay. I was mid-walk back and forgot that I had said that I would start streaming again at 7 and we'd walked to Target, like... we started the walk to Target like 6:30. So totally forgot about that. But here I am. Here we are. Friday streams will be coming back. And we'll be vibing every week once more. So I'm gonna do a little bit of drawing because I haven't drawn much today. And then we'll get straight into commissions again. Hey Chiku, hey Bundy, hey Chucks, hey Santana. Hello. Yeah, I've still been really enjoying using Paint Toolsci for sketches and stuff. Maybe it's because I use Photoshop for everything else, so it feels a lot less official, and it's been how I've drawing in my free time. Thank you for the 2 months sub for 11 months. And thank you, Tojo, as well, for... I forget how many months it said. But thank you. I think you will remain the longest sub holder? 32. Wow, that's crazy. That is pretty crazy. Yeah, pretty much. It's basically whenever you start getting close to a milestone, then I'm like, oh god, I need to get new badges. Honestly, I haven't really consumed any media for the last, like, month. 'Cause, like, Basically, this time last month, I started the packing process, and it was like I would do work and from like 9 to 7 or 8, and then be packing until like 2 a.m. And I did that basically up until move day, and I was working and then unpacking stuff from move day, which was like the 27th or 6th, until I left for Evo, which I went to Evo on the 5th, and I traveled home, and I only got back on Sunday. I haven't watched anything. But I've been, you know what I've really been wanting to watch again? I've really been wanting to watch, like, old Shaman King. I know there's, like, a new one coming out really soon, but I really wanted to watch, like, the original Shaman King anime. And I want to get all the volumes, too. I've been thinking about it a lot. Just, Shaman King is just breath of fresh air for me. But who knows when I'll get around to actually doing any of that. The thing about animes is, like, I don't like listening to the dub, because typically, especially for animes that I've watched before, because I typically watch them in the sub version. So when I watch it, the difference is Hunter x Hunter. I can watch Hunter x Hunter without watching the actual show, and I can just put it on the side, and I know what's happening because I've watched it so many times. I haven't done that for pretty much any other show except for Hunter x Hunter. So with any other show, like an anime that I genuinely love, I want to watch it, like legitimately watch it. And I can't do that typically because I'm always working. But I would love to get Gary into Shaman King. I think he'd really like it because it's just like a solid shonen, you know? It's like a big tournament arc essentially. Why do I like it so much? I think it's from an era of like manga where it's just got like such an interesting cast, right? I think it's like one of the reasons why people like One Piece so much. It's the reason why I love Hunter x Hunter so much. And Shaman King also just like, I don't know, it was, I watched it at a really formative time in my life. I have really good memories with it. I just remember being really invested in like everyone, and I didn't feel so like, I don't know, there's no character where I'm like, you're just a villain, you know? Everyone was kind of interesting in a way that was like really cool. It's just got so much like class. It's got so much style. It's like sick. I don't know. I really loved like the designs in Shaman King. I loved the energy. It's like I haven't seen it in so long that I kind of barely remember like the lingo for it, but like everyone's like spirit weapons. Everyone's like, I don't know, I forget what they're called. Shaman something. It's just cool. The designs are neat. And I'm not like totally psyched about any kind of reboot or revision, except the Hunter x Hunter one was actually legit, like really nice. So I don't know if I'll watch the new one, but I definitely want to watch the old one. I do need to catch up on Mob Psycho. That's another one that I really want Gary to watch and me to rewatch, because we watched what was it, like Ping Pong the Animation, like not too long ago with some friends, and I think he really enjoyed it, and I think he'd really like that kind of alternative, more experimental show. Even though Mob Psycho story-wise is not necessarily like, I think it's still one of his shonen pieces, right? But I don't know, I think he might actually like it. It's hard to say though. Gary has not a lot of patience for anime, and I'm kind of the same at this point. It is my D&D character. This is... I've been really trying to, like, figure out what Kaisa looked like when she was younger. Just because, like, we're in a point in the campaign right now. We took a break for a while, but we got back into it, on Tuesday. And we're in, like, Kaisa's, like, kind of hometown-ish. So a lot of stuff has been coming out about her, like, backstory, which has been very, like, okay, how much am I gonna reveal in this, like, moment? So it's been kind of cool, like, establishing this side of her character. Because before, you know, in a lot of the other places that we've been to in the campaign, she doesn't necessarily have that much, like, she's kind of a free spirit, at least in the way that I kind of framed her. Which might not have been the best, but, like, in this town, she actually has, like, baggage and slight trauma, though it's not really manifesting in any, like, sob story sort of way. History, she's got a reputation, so it's definitely a little bit more personal for her. And it's gotten me thinking about, like, how she grew up and stuff, because it's not really something we've covered. And no one's really had to, like, share their past yet in our or their backstory in the campaign, so she's kind of the first foray into, like, potentially a lot of stuff is gonna come out about her, and I'm like, okay, I have to be prepared emotionally to, like, figure out how I can, like, still keep some stuff hidden, but also, like, share more about who this character is, because I think out of all my characters that I've thought up, she's the one with the most interesting, like, not, I guess, hook. I didn't realize how much of how much of myself I put into her and, like, my fear about certain things. So actually, like, thinking about it and trying to, like, flesh it out before I have to actually share it with everyone else, has been interesting. It's been a good experiment, a thought experiment in, like, how do I want to present this information? How do I want to share this in a way that feels, like, authentic and real, and not just like, oh, here's an information dump about my character's sad story, but something that, like, you know, what is a character with simultaneously so little to lose, but also so much that they want to bury, that, like, they're constantly in this state of, like, completely free, this, like, so-called free spirit, but they've got, like, all of these different shackles to, like, their past and stuff, and how does that, like, manifest into, like, how she talks to people? How does she, like, tell people about herself? Because one of her things is that she has a smug, I don't know if any of my D&D but people are here. So she has a background, like a D&D character background, that explicitly prevents her from lying or cheating other people, but she herself lies a lot. She's a pathological liar. But she's an honorable person, enough in a way that, like, she won't lie in very specific circumstances because of that code, right? And that's what she was raised on. But in order to survive, there's like a sense of, like, what do I lie about, and how do I lie in a way that's not actually lying? It's half-truths. The way that I kind of wrote the code that was based off of the code in the actual handbook is, like, we speak in half-truths, not falsehoods, right? So the idea, like, you don't lie, you just don't say the whole thing, right? And how much can she say before it all kind of starts to crumble, this, like, veneer of confidence and this veneer of, like, you know, she's a free spirit, and she is a free spirit. She's finally free after this period in her life, but obviously she still has to grow a lot more, and she still has a lot more of her own humanity to figure out. And she's got, like, a pretty she doesn't really care about a lot of people. So even though she's like going to bat for obviously the rest of the people in the D&D party, she's like gonna like try to save them and stuff. She's a cleric, like she's gonna heal them. But when it really comes down to it, like how much is she actually willing to risk for them? And I was thinking about this because there's like a developing story or relationship between my character and a different person's character. And so far it's been very like one-sided. She hasn't like really reciprocated in any way. And I was trying to figure out like what is her like relationship spectrum, right? Like what is her spectrum for romance and all that when she is someone who has, for the most part, been in survival mode for the majority of her life. And how does she like view love and caring for other people and like that kind of a transaction between two humans or just two people in general. And I was trying to figure out like how would she rationalize that, and a part of me was thinking, you know, this idea of like she can absolutely take care of the people around her. But as soon as she feels that it becomes like another shackle to this part of her life, as soon as she starts to feel, because like furbolgs live for hundreds of years, right? She's got a long lifespan, and she knows that. She knows that the people around her are not going to live as long as she does. And she's young for furbolgs. So there's like an idea that, you know, even if she makes relationships now, it's not like they're going to be there later in her life. But even when she does meet someone who does have a long life, does she want to shackle herself to them in a way through this relationship? And especially when it comes to like romantic stuff, this idea of like, you might give up everything for me, but I absolutely won't give up anything for you. You know, there's not much you risk or lose by like, by healing someone, right? It's a momentary thing. But only if healing them is an investment of itself, right? She heals party members because she's investing in their usefulness. She's investing in like their ability to keep her out of danger should the time come, right? If she heals a random person on the street, she's not doing it to heal them. She's doing it because potentially there's something in it for her. But you know, and she's not like a bad person. She's just a very selfish person. And you can be both kind and nice and thoughtful without being selfless, I guess. Is this your gun priest? Yeah, she's my gunslinger forge cleric. Which, that's another thing actually too. I'm not a religious person by any means. I do not really, it's not like something that jives with me. So when I was making this cleric, it was because I liked the idea of a gunslinger who heals. That was like a thing for me. I liked that idea. But then I actually thought about it, I'm like, oh god, the clerics are supposed to be religious. They're supposed, like, they're really connected with their god. That's like the whole point of the class. So there was like a point where I was like, okay, I gotta actually think about her relationship with religion. And the fact that she hasn't prayed at all in the entire campaign. She hasn't even referenced him. She learned... So here's like the breakdown of her. I hope to God no one from my D&D campaign is here. A brief breakdown. She grew up in what is essentially like an archipelago for like the black market, right? She grew up in like a pretty shifty town. It's like a big tourist trap in a way, but it's definitely shady. A lot of stuff goes down there that is under the law. And she kind of fell into that whole circle. And at one point she gets put onto like we're doing a pirate campaign. She's a pirate. So she gets put on a Navy ship undercover. And something that she learns while she's on that ship is the Forge Cleric, like, path. She meets a Forge Cleric who, Forge Clerics are, lore-wise, choose an apprentice. And so I was thinking, like, okay, so she's, like, trying to maintain her cover. And in doing so, she learns this kind of faith. And she ultimately doesn't really give a shit about the faith. That's the thing. She doesn't actually care, but there's a part of her that finds comfort in this sort of, like, belief and this, like, confidence. And, you know, like, I think there's something really interesting about someone who, like, doesn't understand the impact of something until much later. So she takes on, like, she learns Forge Cleric skills. She's a gunslinger first, and then she dual classed into or multi-classed into a Forge Cleric. So, you know, it kind of sprouted from the idea that I wanted a gunslinger who could also heal people. But then from that, it came out this kind of deeper story of, like, okay, how does a non-religious person who takes on a faith reconcile with that faith? Like, how much is she going to learn from following this god who's a dwarven god? She's a furbolg with a dwarven god of the Forge, right? And like, how is she going to take on those beliefs and really allow that to, like, inform her? Yeah, I was thinking that she would basically the act of praying would be through manufacturing bullets or working on her gun, right? I was thinking eventually I want to get to a point where I can craft guns. My DM has not let me do that yet because he's afraid of what it means. But I am waiting for him to let me craft a gun. You know, like, what does it mean for her to finally, like, come to terms with the fact that she's a cleric? And in that way, you know, I think religion is going to be a big part of her life. But I haven't figured that out yet, so we'll figure it out. A lot of this, like, thought stuff happens whenever I'm just, like, drawing her. Because, I don't know, there's something very therapeutic about, like, kind of fleshing out characters as you're, like, kind of massaging them into existence. So I really enjoy thinking about it, and it's suddenly become more relevant to do it because she suddenly needs to have all this stuff figured out. So we'll definitely see how it goes. I don't know if the DM is gonna make me, like, spill the beans anytime soon, but we'll see. How do you go about drawing the same character in different angles and expressions? So drawing expressions and a recognizable character in different positions requires a level of structure, right? You want to be able to turn form in space. So when it's knowing proportion, it's being able to replicate proportion by being able to, like, see it and like judge it by eye, right? You can use guides, but the point of it really is to basically show off that, like, you know what this form is, not only in this 2D plane, but in 3D space. So I'd say when you are drawing any face, really try to imagine like you're sculpting it out of clay. If you've ever had the chance to actually take a sculpture class or anything like that, if you ever get the chance to, you absolutely should. There's something innately prolific and, like, it just seeps into everything else that you do by actually learning how to sculpt in real life. Or even just a 3D sculpting class too, but when you see, like, the shapes that you make turn in space and you realize how two-dimensional your idea of the world is, as a 2D artist, like it really changes the way you go about drawing. Because suddenly you're not drawing lines because you know that the nose should be there. You're drawing lines because you know that on that unseen plane that's turning away from you, that's being hidden by that that protruding nose, you know all the angles that kind of create that line. Or else you would make a stronger decision about, like, do I put that line there? Is the angle sharp enough? Is it too flat? Is it a flatter nose? In which case, maybe I don't put a line there. You know, like those kinds of things. Those decisions that you make in 2D space are incredibly influenced by what is actually happening in 3D space. And so, if you find yourself struggling to draw a character at different angles, it could be that you don't have a strong enough understanding of what that character is actually, how that plane is actually formed in three-dimensional space. So, I've heard some people say the Asaro head helps. It's basically like this sculptural head that you can kind of turn, and it has planes on it. Honestly, I think, like, kind of just one, either having sculptural experience or even looking at 3D models turning in space with polygons turned on, like, it helps you understand that, you know, more than just proportion, it's applied proportion. It's applying depth and like surface, what is it, like the surface of 3D shapes and 3D forms, and translating that faithfully across multiple different angles. It requires a level of consistency in that, like, image in your head of what does this character look like at all different you know, perspectives, right? So in actually trying to draw a head from different angles, the easiest way that can help you to do that is using guides, right? Every program, for the most part, comes with rulers, which are just basically fancy guides, and you can try to use a ruler to just basically flat out measure how far things are from each other. Typically, if you just rely on rulers, it doesn't end up looking very good. So I think it's much better to try and really, in your mind's eye, envision what does each line that I put down mean for this face in a different perspective. And imagine each plane, right? Break it down into simple shapes if you have to, but then, like, make it more complex as you go. The idea of, like, each plane on that face creating unseen angles that we don't actually draw, but will impact the silhouette and, like, kind of that outer outline and even the kind of profile view of a figure. It's the unseen part that really will change the character's face at different angles. With expressions, same stuff ultimately. Like, it's about a level of consistency in your, like, imagining of the 3D form. But mainly, predominantly proportion, right, is the thing that changes people's, like, the face that you're drawing, and that's what makes it look like a different character, is the proportions are inaccurate, right? And, I mean, you can study how people's face actually deform in real life, but generally, if you're struggling to make a character look the same across multiple different expressions, it's because you made the jaw too wide, or the nose is too long, like, small things like that. And ultimately, there's nothing that you can do about that except get your eye more and more trained to accurately translate proportions, keep drawing, you know, or attempt to draw, you know, more and more, just, like, I guess, attempts. Try to attempt it a lot more, because there's nothing you can really do to train your eye except to try it, analyze it, make notes, try to fix it, and then try it again. That's kind of the only trial and error way that I know. And your eye is something that is takes a while to train. It's not like a super, I guess, like, obvious thing that you can really fix. So that is a predominantly a proportion problem, I think. Do I ever plan a drawing? Like, I've been wanting to make a drawing in full color, but I kind of hate the process, mainly finding my... Yeah, I plan any drawing that, I'm not just making for myself, right? Like, I don't plan, like, sketches that I do, but anything else that's, like, professional work or needs, like, a composition, like, full images, yeah, I'll plan it. And I mean, I also dislike the process. I don't enjoy coloring. I don't like the process of painting as much as I used to. But you kind of just have to figure out, like, where do you find how do you find, like, sort of the minute joy in various parts of the process. There's always going to be something that you hate doing. Like, for me, I can't describe a part of art that I despise more than flat coloring. It's arguably the easiest, most brain dead part of it, but I hate it so much. I hate it with such a deep passion. Clip Studio thankfully makes it much easier, but they still leave, like, gaps in between, and it, like, infuriates me to no end. Hate flat coloring. I'll paint for hours and I'll be fine. I'll sketch and line art for hours and I'll be fine. But as soon as I have to flat color anything, it is like pulling teeth. It's like 90% of the reason why I don't color most of my stuff. And I just, like, draw them out in lines, and I never post any of the sketches I make. It's just, like, not my favorite, right? But I accept that when I have to get a drawing out, or when I have to, like, paint something for work, I have to just kind of grit my teeth and get through it. And it's always worth it in the end to get through it, but that's why I don't do it in my free time. Is there any aspect in drawing that you struggle with? I'm not very good at, like, technical stuff. So, like, accurately training an object in space, drawing things from the same thing from different angles. I like how I gave an answer about how to draw characters and different expressions and stuff from different perspectives, but that's, like, I struggle with it so much. Cannot draw a face in, like, facing forward and then facing 3/4 and side without it looking completely different. It's the worst thing about working in games is that you basically have to do a turnaround for everything that you do. Not good with hard surface stuff. Not good with things that deal a lot in perspective. Like, I'm a one-trick pony in a lot of ways. Anything that has to do with, like, a very technical skill, I do struggle with, and I've been trying to get better at it. And it usually means, like, really trying to push for imagining, like, these things in 3D space in my head while I'm drawing them. So I'm not just, like, drawing lines. I'm actually trying to account for form and mass, and, like, to a certain extent, like, placing the line in a certain position on the paper conveys a certain position and depth in 3D space. And there's no way, like, that arm would sit there if this pose was gonna work. It's too deep in, it cut into the ribs. Like, that doesn't work that way. I have to really think about that and, like, fix it, because that's me trying to be conscientious about my kind of lack of naturally thinking about structure. I don't do it enough, and I'm trying to get better at it. Which is why I'm drawing I've drawn a lot of feet in my art lately, because feet is one thing on the human body that is incredibly complex form-wise. It's surprisingly flat in a lot of ways, surprisingly curved in some, but just incredibly complex. And I don't like drawing feet. But I've spent the last couple like months really trying to learn it, because I know that like for the past couple years I've never liked drawing that part, and I've always loved when people were really able to properly draw like hands and feet, because they were complicated forms but they felt like they were physical and real. So just finding parts of the body to focus on has helped for sure, because like when I'm drawing a character, I can just try and draw them with more complicated hand poses or with like bare feet, and I can really practice like, okay, I have to think about this form in space pointing in this direction, and I gotta actually put from like brain to paper, right? I don't do a lot of brain to paper stuff in my free time because I like drawing from just like total imagination, but it's a practice in intent. It's a practice in purposefully trying to craft a object in perspective, and I don't do it enough, and I need to do more. So there's that. Yeah, I'd say it takes being very aware of it first, right? I think the common meme of you think everything fine that night before, and then you look at it the next day and you're suddenly realizing it doesn't look as nice anymore. The first step to anything is recognizing that that's a problem. Right? Like with looking at something with fresh eyes, it means that you kind of get to see things you didn't see before. And something I kept noticing was like the artists that I was really following at the time, or starting to follow at the time, all were incredibly structurally sound artists. They're artists that I felt like knew the stuff that they were drawing inside and out. They knew how it turned in space. They were confident in that. And I didn't feel confident in turning things in space. So I recognized like that was like a serious problem for me. And I recognized that a couple years ago. I think back in high school, I noticed that was a big problem for me. But I haven't really gotten to a point where I've been feeling comfortable with it until very recently, where I'm like, okay, I think I'm starting to understand like how this works. And it's been like, over 4 years since I recognized that this was a problem I had. So it's definitely just a time thing. It's a time, it's an effort. I keep rehashing this problem. Every time I do like any kind of drawing, I'm like, okay, remember like this is something that you're struggling with. We got to keep working on it. So anytime I draw for fun, I would try and make sure I put in something that I would practice structural kind of intent and whatnot. Been a few years doing that, and I think I've gotten better, but still not there yet totally. With the advent of new programs being competitive like Procreate and Clip Studio, do studios still require you to do a piece in a specific program? Does it really matter these days? No, I don't think it matters. The only thing I think that really matters is file type for a lot of people, or for companies, because Photoshop files can be used in other programs like for 3D modelers and texture artists and stuff like that. If your program can like save out the file format that you need, I don't think companies really care. The only thing is that you might not be able to download that software onto your work computer, and you might not be able to work on your home computer potentially. I think a lot of companies nowadays don't really care, because work from home is like such a viable thing for a lot of people, that a lot of professional art that is under NDA gets done on home computers with your own personal like stuff, and it's whatever, no one cares. So I honestly think that like, oh, and also some companies will have licenses that they can give you. So that's another thing, right? If you want to use the free license because your job offers it to you, you can. If you don't want to, they're not gonna like force you to, as far as I'm aware. Unless you're working for a more specialized field like animation, they have a whole pipeline that requires probably certain programs so that everyone's using the same stuff. It's really easy to integrate. There might be a like specific pipeline for that. Or, stuff like Procreate and Clip Studio can both export in PSDs. There's no telling if something weird happens to the PSD though. PSDs are a very common file format in professional like work. So I wouldn't be surprised if like you might not need to use Photoshop, but you might be asked to provide Photoshop files. I would never recommend assuming that people can open Procreate or Clip Studio files. Clip Studio is still very niche in Western studios. Procreate is a very common personal art thing, but don't expect any professional like job or client to be able to open a Procreate file. Like, that's kind of the biggest thing. Especially if they ask for PSDs, it's because they want full ownership over the entire file, all layers, all that kind of stuff. If you can't provide that, that's the problem. But if you work in Procreate or Clip Studio and then you save it out as a PSD, it's fine. So perspective is not something that's easy to learn, I think, on your own, because there's a lot of random stuff with perspective that is more specialized, like knowing how to actually measure in depth properly, depth and space in perspective is like a whole technical arts course, right? But when it comes to actual just like perspective, when you're applying it to characters, the core of it is very simple. Parallel lines that go back in space, like go to a vanishing point at a horizon that's at the eye line of the viewer. If you want something to, like, you know, you can have multiple vanishing points and that will create like different views, camera lens stuff, like, you know, that's like the more basic end of perspective, which you can learn from, I mean, I feel like there's plenty of courses now that probably cover it, intro to perspective stuff. But actually applying perspective to characters is slightly different. You know, I think people teach, like, putting the human body in a box. People teach constructing the human body out of forms, so like being able to say that the torso is this cube, right? And then the arm is like a sphere, and then the actual arm is a cylinder. And then how do you make this more complex? Well, then we realize that the rib cage is not a box. It's actually this like tombstone shape almost. I'm gonna do this in a while. And then it's realizing that, oh, it actually like has kind of a flatter, it's much flatter than people think it is. And it kind of slopes back. It peaks much lower than people think it does. And then it has, you know, shapes cut out of it. You know, it gets more and more complex, right? That's kind of the idea of building from base shapes and getting higher and higher. And perspective has a big part to play in that kind of practice, right? In that thought of building complexity in a human body. And I think ultimately, when you're practicing it, when you're drawing a human body, it's knowing and really feeling, right? I don't think people talk enough about like actually like trying to feel the form of like 3D form and 3D shapes. Something I really felt strongly about when I was learning or doing figure drawing in school was my teacher kept saying that my figures felt very floaty. They felt very like they weren't really grounded in space. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just put a ground plane. And he's like, that's not, it doesn't work like that. You have to literally feel the pose. You have to feel like your limbs are getting dragged down by gravity. You have to feel the tension of like holding a pose for that long, especially if you're doing a pose that's moving. Actually feeling like you're doing the movement yourself will change how you draw it in a way that's very subtle. It's very like not technical, but that intent is really important. And when it comes to like applying perspective to figures, the intent of knowing how this form turns in space, feeling it as if you're like actually like running your hand across this like complex form, and you feel the fact that it's like it's flatter on one end than it does on the other. When you turn it, it's kind of thinner, you know, like when you feel like your forearm and stuff, it's not really a cylinder, but it's not really like a rectangular cube either, right? It's like this shape that has kind of a wider end, but it peaks at different like in different angles, you know, all that kind of stuff. And that's like the application perspective. It's understanding that these complicated forms do have much simpler rules of perspective that you can follow, right? Same thing, parallel lines going back in space. But it's knowing how small changes to perspective vastly change how you interpret that form. It's how poses become less stiff. It's knowing the complexity of a pose is everything is pointing in a slightly different way, a slightly different angle. And when you feel how form changes across a surface, when you feel how a torso moved and rotated slightly, will create this feeling of comfort or a feeling of tension. When you understand that raising an arm in a certain angle will drastically change the energy of a pose. Like, that's the application part of it. And honestly, I think ultimately it's just being cognizant that you're making these choices, right? I'm understanding that this is the angle in which I'm turning this hand. I'm planning to do this. I want this head to be turning in this way for a specific reason. And, you know, once you've gotten past actually learning the basics of perspective, which is usually where people trip up, is not necessarily the application part. It's actually learning actual perspective, honest to God perspective. And then everything else, where it's like, okay, well, when you're drawing a body, you're not actually putting it in a box. It's a bunch of different boxes slightly rotated off of each other in different angles. And that's kind of the rest of it part. So I'd say start with basic perspective. Start with putting a box in space. Learn the process by which people make the body more and more complicated from that box in space. And then view everything as you're drawing it a box in space. View fingers like boxes and cubes in space. Think of the torso like that, because it makes it easier. And then at some point you will stop needing to view things in simplified forms, and you can start feeling the complexity. You can start feeling the different variations. And that's when perspective gets interesting, in my opinion. That's when it actually becomes cool and fun to do, because suddenly these choices that you make are they're intimate, they're very personal. Choosing to have the body slope a little bit into like a pose and feel the weight of that is an incredibly, I don't know, it's a very genuine choice to make when you're drawing something. And that little bit of choice coming through is when you know you've really mastered perspective, really mastered structure. And that's usually the sign of a really well-trained or even just well-practiced draftsman is in that application of perspective. Do you give a work in progress to a client? Yes. How did you learn to draw drapery and clothes from your imagination? I drew drapery and clothes not from imagination. And then I applied what I learned like everything else. Never understood the box thing, specifically how the object turns in the box. It's not so much that the object turns in the box, but the box is kind of like the outer boundary of this object, and as it turns, you can kind of track how each point on it turns. If you've never seen like Peter Hahn, I don't love his stuff. Honestly, the work he does is, I would hate to do it myself. But there's a reason why he's like the premier technical teacher, is because if you look at the assignments from his class or like the stuff that he does, every point on an object can be measured, traced, it can be mathematically tracked. Like, that's what technical art is. It's being able to manifest each point on something using context clues. It's going back into space using basic, like, the fundamentals of perspective is honestly anchoring yourself visually in a virtual, quote unquote, in your mind 3D space, and then going backwards from that point to be like, okay, here's distance, here's what I'm defining as a unit of distance, and within this box, this is how much each unit of distance is in space, in context, right? And in perspective, going into vanishing points, stuff like that, I can physically measure how long this side is. I can give, like, as long as I have established a unit of measurement within this fictional three-dimensional space, a bounding box, this box that you create out on the outside of a complex object, allows you to then extrapolate points of information. Obviously, it gets very convoluted and complex the more complicated your shape is, but what he teaches is the beginning of that. It's the beginning of understanding that that's how perspective works. That's how we use perspective to not just, like, you know, put things in angles, because one thing that people do a lot, and I do this too, when you put something in perspective, it suddenly seems to get longer, or like it starts like feeling thin, and like the body, when you try to draw the body in a box, you're like, why does it look wrong? It's because when you're doing that and it looks wrong, it's more likely that you're misunderstanding how much mass something is, how much mass something takes. Real, true perspective and technical artists are extremely aware of that kind of virtual grid that exists in all axes. They are aware of how much distance something visually in a 2D plane, how something visually looks versus how it translates into that 3D space. They're very aware of what that translation is and how you can translate that. Each line that they place on a technical grid is precise. It's measured out. It's very much a definitive fact. It's the sciences within arts. So obviously it doesn't usually get that complicated when you're just doing a box to learn about drawing things in perspective, but that's kind of the point of the box. The box is the outer boundary. It's the most amount of volume that you can allot this object, and then you carve away the excess mass that doesn't need to be there. That's how you create complexity. You keep the mass that's supposed to be there within the box. I like to kind of think about it like marble. You carve away the extra marble that you don't need, and within that box is what's left, the part that you want. It doesn't ever look like the box, usually, the more complicated things get. But that's what the box is for. It's to help for when you turn something in space and it's really complicated. At the very least, you know how to turn a box in space. And from that box, you can start carving away all the parts of it that you don't need. And it's a way to understand how things turn in space. Have you ever been given anything at your job that is a challenge for you, and how did you go about tackling it? Well, I can't talk about what I do at work, but yes, it has happened, and I tackle it the same way I tackle any problem, which is I try to figure out, with the tools that I do know how to use, with the tools that I do have, how do I come up with a solution for this problem, right? Because the temptation is like, oh, I get a challenge that I'm not prepared for. Maybe gotta like learn all new things, try and like rise up to the challenge the right way. But that's never usually the way that I want to do it, mainly because it takes too long and I'm not good at these new tools. Obviously, I've been using this set of tools. Why would I take time away from finishing this assignment to go learn a bunch of new things and come back and do it worse than I normally would do my job, you know? So I always try first to figure out what can I do with the tools I already have. And then figure out what am I actually missing that I can't not have, right? This is a skill I can't avoid if I'm going to do this. If I get asked to do a mech, I can't avoid the fact that I am really weak in hard surface and engineering fundamentals, right? I don't know pistons and how like gears work. I don't know how like I barely understand an axle and stuff like all attached together, and I don't know the basic structure of an engine. So like those are things that I should learn to tackle the challenge. But I also know basic stuff like perspective. I know basic things like building mass in a 3D space. I know form design, I know shape design. I know what a form would look like if it wasn't made out of steel. You know, I'm an organic designer. I like drawing things that are organic and humanoid. But when I'm given the challenge to, say, draw a mech, then at that point, then I have to think about, okay, I know how to draw humans, and I know how to draw organic things. This is not organic, but regardless of how hard the angles are, the principles of designing things that are organic still apply, right? I still have big, medium, small shapes. I still have, I need to have like a design focus. I need to have like maybe like a hook for this design. So design rules still apply, but the difference is how I communicate that design. And then at that point I need to look at, okay, so what are the basic building blocks of a mech? I have to figure out how is this thing powered. I need to figure out, is it supposed to hold anything? How big is it? How what's its purpose? What does it do? How do things in real life kind of convey the same kind of form language? If it's supposed to be fast, do I go for like a rocket or a jet? Something that's meant to cut through kind of like air, right? Do I do something bulky, like it's like a tank? Okay, well, let's look at anything that's bulky, like actual factory machinery that doesn't move. It's never supposed to move. It's supposed to sit there and do its job. If I'm looking at weapons or artillery, like, you know, I do that research. It's new stuff, but I'm not necessarily using new tools. That's typically how I tackle challenges, because when you're on the job, you typically don't have the time to learn a whole new set of skills. And I don't think you necessarily should, because the whole point, I think, of problem solving is learning or understanding that every problem can be tackled in a multitude of ways. And you just have to, your job is to be that creative that comes up with a solution that doesn't require you to be someone who you're not, right? In every problem that I encounter, I try to keep that in mind. Like, I'm not trying to be someone else. I shouldn't have to be someone else. I shouldn't have to be this other artist in order to do this job well. I should be able to do what I do well and what I do best and still complete this challenge and still complete this assignment. And it might not look as good as someone who's been drawing mechs their whole life, but I have faith, or I try to have faith in the skills that I have and the skills that I bring to the table. And someone said that I should do it, or I could do it, and I'm going to do it. So there's no point in like worrying about if I'm going to do it well or not. I just have to get it done. That's generally how that goes. But I can't say anything about what I actually do at my job. Hydrate. No, hydrate. That's good. I've been talking for a while. Man, another thing I actually have to get back into learning, I need to like rethink how I draw folds. I think I draw way too many of them. I think I'm drawing something I've noticed recently about like the stuff that I've been doing. I think I've been getting really in my head about it. Is I draw like way too many lines, and I need to really start cutting some of them down. I draw way too many details. It slows me down a lot. There are definitely lines I don't need that I keep putting in because I get kind of like, I get in my head and I just start drawing all these details. And one place that I draw way too many lines in is in folds. I need to start thinking about which folds are actually important to draw and then which ones I can just like kind of leave for a different time. Because I really don't need to draw all these, but I don't know. So part of me, I think, has always thought that in order to make clothes look good, you just have to draw more folds, and it makes it look more realistic and more researched. But that's not true. I think it's just a holdover from when I was learning how to draw fabric, and I was like, okay, draw more folds, and it means that it'll look better or more accurate or something. But I don't know. I really need to economize a lot more. Tis not the way. I will get up and stretch. Ooh, I'm hoping it works out. I got my new desk. And it's supposedly it's not it's an IKEA desk, but it's not like an actual built one. It's a tabletop that I got, and I got a standing desk, like legs for the desk, but they're like separate because IKEA lets you do that. So I might have a standing desk. I'm hoping it all works out. I need to do that this weekend because I basically have to get rid of all of my, I have to like completely unplug my computer, completely tear out my desk setup that I currently have. So I'm waiting to do that, but I might be able to actually just like be standing and drawing, which is kind of crazy to me. And I think it'll be good because I realized something recently. I get really like antsy in the morning. Like I would sit down to start working and I'm just like, oh my god, like I feel like I can't breathe. I need to like do something. And I thought standing desks were like cool, like gimmicky, but I never actually thought about getting one myself. I thought like, oh well, I'd get in and I would never use the standing feature, you know. But like recently I've been really feeling this kind of like pressure in my chest when I sit down, and I'm like kind of antsy, and I don't even have coffee. Like it's just some like weird anxiety in the morning that I just don't know how to get out except like pace around my room and like make weird noises so I can kind of just like verbalize this like stress that I have in the morning. So maybe having a standing desk will actually be very helpful for me. Get out like morning jitters when I don't know, maybe in like a morning meeting or something, because it's been very like distracting how not focused I am in the morning. I get so much more focused like after work has ended. I'm like peak performance. Like by 4 p.m. I'm on it, I'm drawing like page after page, we're doing it. But like from the time I wake up until like lunchtime, I'm just like vacant. I'm dissociating. I'm a terrible worker. But yeah, that's something I've been noticing. So maybe we'll see if the standing desk actually like helps me at all, or maybe I just don't ever use the standing feature like I thought I would. Who knows? I might actually just never try it, never verify that it works. I guess we'll see. I mean, the nice thing about working from home is that like you kind of can work a later shift if you want to. Like obviously you have to be there for meetings and stuff, but like if no one's really watching you do anything, you can kind of take that time that you need to like get into the mood of working and then just work the extra hours. I would love if I could get off work at 5 and just be like done with it. You know, I'm at home, I'm doing stuff at home, and it's all that. But I have always worked better at night. So I think there's a part of me in the morning that's just like, hey, this sucks, and I'm unfocused. There's too many things happening. My brain can't handle it. And then at night, I'm instantly focused. I'm geared in. I don't know why it happens like that. It typically happens though, like at work. I'll struggle to do a lot of stuff between the hours of 9 to like 2, and then 3 to 4, I'm just like, oh, instantly, like I'm jacked in. I'm in the Matrix. Like we're good now. Like I get so much stuff done, and then I burn out, and then I get so much stuff done like a couple hours after that. So who knows? Yeah, I don't know, like, coffee doesn't really help me either. Like, people are like, oh, if you drink coffee, I'll feel ready to work. And I don't. Coffee makes me anxious, and it makes me very, like, I don't know, it makes me, like, very, I don't know, I just don't think caffeine really, like, helps me. It's not really beneficial. Because I don't wake up, I'm not necessarily more awake. I just feel more anxious. My stomach is all in knots. It's, you know, it is not my favorite. Hi, Gia. No worries. Yeah, I might talk too fast. I'm sorry, but I'm very happy that you can come by and you liked the stream enough to come back. I know my stuff is very different from Shoto's stuff, so always very happy to hear when people like what they see. Are you excited to see his new outfit? I saw that he announced it. Yeah, he's doing an outfit reveal, I think on the 23rd, 22nd. flip. What would you say is the best way to sniff out bad art advice? I guess, I mean, it depends on what it's about, you know? Generally, like, I think if someone tells you there's no money, there's no future in this, like, that kind of stuff, it's usually like, okay, something that is difficult, potentially to a near impossible degree, is not necessarily impossible, right? A lot of teachers will say that being a character designer is impossible. Way too many people in the market. It's literally not. But it is competitive. I think the reason why it's impossible is because a lot of people try to go for the same studios or the same places, right? Or they go for places that are hard for them specifically to get into, maybe because it's overseas or it's international. And there's also just kind of like a lot of people interested in doing character design, so it vastly inflates how people think the market is like. But frankly, like, you know, it is competitive. It is not necessarily like overrun and with jobs, but it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. I did not have to like claw my way through pools and pools of people. I was honestly I was pretty much the only character concept artist at the last 2-3 places that I worked at. Like, there is a drought. So, you know, it's like, if anyone tells you like, oh, it's impossible, don't even try, like, generally if you're interested in doing that stuff, like, you can make it work as long as you really want to do it, right? If you're not super interested in character concept, like, you don't have to go through the heartache of it. But if you do, and someone told you that, like, it's impossible, there's no jobs, like, I promise you, there absolutely is. And with anything in life, difficult does not mean impossible, but it still does mean difficult, right? So I'm not gonna say it's like ridiculously easy, but the key point is impossible, right? Other art advice, anything that's framed as like, this is the trick and tip that will change your life, or like you only need this one thing, or whatever. Like, generally those are clickbaity things, and then they give you the actual advice later on. But there isn't really stuff like that. Tips are very useful. I'd say that I've learned a lot just from like small tidbits of like, oh, I found this out when I was doing this study. I'm like, that's a really good point. But like, whenever someone tries to frame like, you only need this one thing to be a professional artist, it's like, all right, but you just want me to click on your video, or it's like, never do this, or whatever. It's like, okay, there are always shades of complexity and nuance within something. You know, whenever people say like, don't ever do this if you want to get hired, or sometimes those advice are legitimate, and then sometimes it's like, don't ever draw in an anime style. It's like, I don't know. You just have to know where you're gonna apply for that kind of stuff. Okay. I don't have anything against the guy. His personality really puts me off, though. And I know he always is clickbaiting people. Like, that's kind of his whole personality. Like, that's his character that he plays. It's just I don't know. Every time I see it, I'm just kind of like, it's kind of not my cup of tea. And I always wonder, like, when people see that kind of stuff, are they like taken in by that, or are they actually like listening to the legitimate advice he's giving later on in the video, you know? But I mean, there's a lot of people that get into like they get into content creation for artists, and they're just like, this is the only thing you need for becoming a character concept artist or whatever. I know, and again, I know it's not what his video is about. He's usually very nice. He always usually agrees with other people's stuff. But there's a little bit of like a charged element to it where I'm like, I hope people don't actually subscribe to the clickbaity part, you know? I feel like, I just wonder if it like creates like a weird kind of environment. But again, I don't know anything about his community. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're great. It's just not my cup of tea. But yeah, there are some tips like that, like I see on YouTube occasionally. I don't know. Like, tips are hard because sometimes they're framed in a way it's like, well, like, yeah, like if you because okay, here's the real problem with tips, right? Is that sometimes they're framed as the real solution to your problems. They're framed as if you do this, everything's gonna be fixed, you'll finally get it. But they don't actually teach you the reason why you should do it. They don't teach you the reason why this is the quote-unquote correct way or the better way. Like, it's always out of context the reason why this tip works or this tip makes your stuff look better. You know, and again, no shade to these people. It's usually how people take this information that kind of bothers me. When Ross Draws started the whole color dodge thing, the reason why color dodge looks cool is because, in a way, there's a lot of reasons why color dodge creates like interesting like results. Is because color dodge it kind of creates sometimes happy accidents with colors, and it makes things feel a little bit more alive. And also, color dodge can replicate a very real, actual like effect, which is subsurface scattering. It's a legitimate effect that happens with more translucent materials, and it does make your stuff look a lot better. And color dodge is a way for you to do that really quick and in a way that might not feel natural, but it looks cool, right? And so color dodge is a great filter layer effect to use. When Ross started doing a lot of the color dodge stuff, and it kind of became his brand, I saw a lot of people start to use color dodge in a way that just felt like they're using it to use it, right? They're using it because Ross Draws used it and stuff. But Ross was using it in a way that was very intentional. It's because he added it to the rim light. It created the pseudo effect of subsurface scattering, even if it didn't make sense, you know. But people started just using color dodge to use it because they thought that the point of it was just use color dodge in your stuff. That's what made it good. Not using color dodge can sometimes create this effect which actually exists in lighting that can help you add a lot of context and a lot of really interesting lighting schemes and texture to a very specific lighting setup. And then when you take that knowledge elsewhere, you can then say, okay, well, I'm not necessarily in the same situation that a Ross Draws like illustration would be lit, but at the same time, I can say that, okay, in this instance, I want to use subsurface scattering to really draw attention to this one part of the face. I'll show you guys an instance of this, because this was one of my favorite pieces for the longest time. I wonder if I can find it just naturally. One of the character concept artists on Wukong Black Myth posted a painting that I thought was brilliant. It was such a lovely painting. I loved it. And it has exactly what Ross Draws is trying to replicate with color dodge without actually doing color dodging stuff. And it's the thing that I think you should be taking away from the tip. But it's not that's not what the tip is about. The tip is just says use color dodge if your stuff is looking a little boring. That's not the point though, right? The point is you're trying to recreate a very specific effect, and the effect is this kind of brighter sort of red that he puts in the eye. It's using subsurface scattering through the skin to kind of help you draw your eye to this place of saturation, and it adds so much to the skin because it makes it feel warmer. It makes it feel like blood's flowing through. And this is kind of the effect that color dodge can give you in a much different way. But the thing that it's trying to do is the same, right? And so, you know, those are some of the tips that, like, I see and I'm like, okay, I wish they gave context for why this tip is important, right? When people say, like, when you're drawing the wrist, just add this bump. The point is not the bump. The point is the fact that when you're drawing wrist, there's a lot of other bones that are in the wrist instead of just being like, here is the radius and ulna, and then here's the hand, right? The rest of the hand. It's like, no, there are a lot of bones that are in the wrist that change that connection between the arm to the hand. That's why that bump's there. It's not just because it's a bump. It's the fact that there are more things and more shapes in that connection transition between the arm to the hand that people aren't accounting for. That's the real tip. That's not the tip that you can fit in a short, because obviously you can't do that. And I understand when people make YouTube videos, they're not going to put the real tip in the title. They want people to watch the video. That's where the real tip is actually in the video. But it doesn't happen very often. And it's one of the biggest things that I worry about sometimes. Because, like, if you don't give people a reason to understand, like, why this is important, if you don't give them context for why this makes their art look better, they assume that that one thing is just a piece of the puzzle that they were missing. It's like, oh, I'll just use color dodge. Oh, I'll just put a bump in the wrist. It's not, okay, I need to pay more attention to the fact that there is a lot more nuance in the like transition moments between different parts of the body that I'm not accounting for, because I'm not thinking about nuance. I'm drawing these shapes, but I'm not thinking about the underlying structure of how the body is working. When it comes to color dodge, I'm using color dodge because it's pretty. I'm not thinking about how it adds different tones and colors to a piece and how that can help me with happy accidents create a much more interesting color scheme for this piece. Or the fact that subsurface scattering is most effective and most beautiful when it is very specifically placed around areas of focus, around areas that the light hits, and it would add something genuinely to this piece. Him putting the light here it's backlit in a way. It's him showing the blood running through this character, and even though the skin is very much desaturated, it gives it periods of saturation. That's the important part. That's the part that you actually want to convey to people. Obviously, not everyone can do that in a tip, and it's never a shade to the person giving the tip. It's just like, we don't give context to that kind of stuff. And that's something I wish people would be more aware of when it comes to tips, is like, yes, absolutely, I could give you tips and tricks, but I don't think you actually want the tip. I think you would be much better off taking that time to understand why this thing that you're asking about, how it works, why it's better for you. But it takes so much longer, and people don't want to sit there for like 10 minutes to figure out why this thing is important. They want the quick tip because they want to just start and just go. You know, they want to hear the information, they don't want to go. They're like, okay, piece of the puzzle, I'll put that in my basket, I'm gonna start running. You know, it's like, it's hard, right? You can't treat things like that, but I understand why people do. And it's just the unfortunate part of that transaction of information, right? You can't really convey all that nuance easily. That's why most people don't. But if you're trying to be aware of tips and stuff like that, that's something to be aware of. I will probably run a little bit late tonight just to make up for the time that I wasn't doing stuff. I might just end up drawing just... wait, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself because I was talking a lot. I might just end up doodling for tonight because I don't know. I am in the mood. I'm in the mood. This artist goes by the name of Yangqi. If you go to this person's art station, which is right here, you can see their stuff for Black Myth Wukong, which I'm very excited for still. But yeah, so that's kind of like a long-winded explanation of like something I've been thinking about, because tips are cool. I've learned a lot from tips, obviously. One of the biggest things I've learned is the whole bump in the wrist thing. When you're drawing a wrist that's like bent or something, adding that slight extra kind of form to it actually does create so much more like it just adds so much more form to something. And actually I wonder if I can find it. Slightly horny drawing, hold on. So here, right? So I could have easily not drawn this, and it could have just been like a straight hand to arm. That's fine. It looks fine, right? That's the thing. It looks fine. But it's the fact that I did put in that bump in the wrist, which is like, you know, it's like the I forget what they're called. It's like the collection of bones, right, in between. Because you add that, it creates a much more like genuine like visual effect in showing like, here's the perspective change. Here is the like here's the me showing you that this is turning away from you, that there is a form here that is covering up parts of the hand, like the kind of slope to the thumb and all that kind of stuff. You know, so adding it, I got that from a tip, which was really cool because I was like, I never really thought about that. I didn't do a ton of like wrist studies, so seeing it was like pretty cool. I started putting it in and I'm like, oh, well, it actually is pretty helpful. I learned the context of it later on, so I got slightly better at it. But you know, tips, tricks, like it's all fun stuff. It's all very useful things. But it's kind of your job, if not the person who gives the tip, for you as the person who gets it, to push it further, right? To understand, like, why is this important? Why does this make my art look better? And that's how you make a kind of mid to, like, kind of not great tip to a really good one, a really useful one. And that's just a long-winded way of saying, do your research. Learn why something is better for you. Learn why this thing that you can do makes your art look better. Because it's not just your art increases in value by doing this. It's usually relating to a fundamental thing. And that's why people stress learning fundamentals, is because all of these things genuinely come back always into use. They always pop up in places you don't expect. And that's why, but it's not fun to learn fundamentals, right? Straight through. So you relearn them as you learn to draw, as you get better at it. You relearn various things. This is just basic anatomy, but I had to relearn it because I didn't pay attention to it. And that's good. It's reminding you that there are things that you still don't know, that you still have forgotten. And then you can kind of relearn that. And it's, you come out of it feeling much more complete in your knowledge of X thing. So, long-winded way of saying, dig deeper when someone gives you a tip. There's usually a much better, more concrete lesson to learn. And also, don't trust anyone that speaks in absolutes, right? Don't trust anyone that gives you an ultimatum. A lot of them are clickbaity titles, I understand. I'm never gonna judge someone for doing something to try and game the YouTube algorithm. But ultimatums don't usually exist as cleanly as people would like them to exist. So if anyone tells you you can't do that because there's no future in that, you have to seriously consider, like, what are you willing to do in order to make it happen? Like, if you want to be a character concept artist, it's going to be hard, but if you're willing to put in that time and that effort, it's possible for you. Like, it will be possible for you. If you're not willing to put in the time and effort, then no, it won't be. And it gets into bigger conversations about, like, having access to that kind of privilege, I guess, and those kinds of opportunities. But I guess I'm still naive enough to believe in I don't know, that finding that art in itself, progress in art, is not necessarily as deeply rooted in privilege as other things. Because even someone who goes through years of art school will still come out not having shown for all that work and effort and money. But I don't know. That's a more complicated discussion to have. One that I don't necessarily feel like I have good enough thoughts in. But yeah. Oh, let me know if, like, the music stops or something. I'm not listening to the music because I sit too far away with my little ditzy setup. I sit too far away from my tower to actually have have my headphones reach. So lately I've been listening to everything off of my speakers. But yeah, let me know if the volume changes at all because I can't hear it. Oh, okay. Wait, let me go back. How did you do your avatar reacting and talking? Oh, yes. So this is a program called Viedo Mini. It looks like this. Sorry, my little avatar's gonna get messed up. Viedo Tube Mini. I'm pretty sure it's free. But basically you can put in files for different things. So this is when you're not talking. This is when you start to talk. You can change if you blink while you're not talking, blink while you are talking, and these options are for like, you can change if you move when you're not talking. So you see it kind of like moves around or shakes and shakes even more. But I have it set to not moving. And then this is what happens. I'm bouncing when I am talking, right? It's a really nice movement. And then mouth transition, I think this is, okay, yeah, so when you start to talk, you notice that when I start talking, it jumps a little bit. I don't think I have anything though. And then you set microphone sensitivity. So this is when it captures that you're talking. I have a lot of fan noise, so I have to set it up a little bit. And this is how long it takes for it to kind of stop sensing that you're talking. So it's nice so that it's not super erratic. Like if I set it like really low, it means that it takes longer for it to switch back to not speaking, right? If I set it really high though, as soon as I stop talking, it goes right back to the normal, like, silent image, which can get pretty erratic if you're like me and you have a lot of space in between your words. Sometimes I have to like think about it. So yeah, that's like how it works basically. But I'm pretty sure it's free, and a lot of PNG VTuber people use it for stuff. Yeah, it kind of looks like I'm head bobbing a little bit if I set it too high. Pay what you want. Okay, yeah, so you can donate if you want. Which I did. But that was after I'd used it for a couple months, so I think in my head it was free. Do I not have it credited in the bio underneath the stream as being the reason why my thing is talking? Because if I didn't, then I should put that down there. Okay, then I will change that later. Thank you, Luna. I really do like her. She's very fun to draw. She has a lot of hair, which is, I think, one of my favorite things to draw. It's funny how much she's changed since I started drawing her. She looks so different in the first drawing I made. What does a holy symbol look like? Whatever the Dwarven forge is, I think it's like an anvil and stuff. I don't think it's very well designed. Like it's very like complicated. So I might redesign it a little bit. But yeah, I haven't really thought about it. It's funny, I just, like, I don't even think about the fact that she's supposed to be religious. It's like she goes as far as to wear, like, the equivalent of, like, what is it, a crucifix? What is just, like, the normal necklace, cross necklaces are? Like, she wears one of those to like, use her cleric spells. But like it, like just yeah, rosary. Yeah, she basically wears one of those to cast her cleric spells, and in my brain, I'm just like, yeah, not religious, like at all. Yeah, I don't know. It was something I realized because my DM kept asking me like, oh, so she's like more of the she's more of the religious type, because she's a cleric, and I'm like, nope, never even thought about it, never even considered her being a religious person. So I'm probably going to bring it up to him as being like, hey, here's a plot point, I think, developmentally that I might want to push on. Like, what if at a certain point in time she loses access to her cleric abilities because of kind of like her lack of faith or something like that. Maybe not necessarily losing access to, but maybe like stuff like channel divinity doesn't work. Or she has like a run-in with... some kind of divine entity, and it really makes her question stuff. Funnily enough, she is a crystal kind of person. She's very much obsessed with like gems and stuff, but not really in a mystic bohemian kind of way. She's a girl with rich taste. She likes jewels. So, you know, I think in the context of D&D, being a cleric is a perfectly fine thing for her, but I do not know how I want to handle her faith. It is a very unknown territory for me. I do not know what it's like to have a religious faith. Hey, Teal. Do I use references while drawing? Depends on if I need it. For this stuff, no. I'm very comfortable drawing characters. For weapons, props, anything else, absolutely. I've been pretty good recently. Just finished a bunch of traveling, and I'm hoping I don't have to travel for a while more. And I'm very happy that I'm now in my new place at home drawing. It's been very nice. I wanted to I was getting so tired of Procreate. I was like, I'm gonna riot, or I'm gonna do something bad. Like, if I have to keep using Procreate in this damn iPad. I was very happy coming back to my computer. It was a bit of a tense moment at the end of my trip, because I was like, I need to stop using this iPad. Yes, I do have a desk. Although I'm gonna have to get rid of this desk very soon, because I got a new one. I don't know where to put this desk, because it's my old one. I've had it for like 4 years, almost 5. And I got a new one because this one's not big enough to hold, like, well, one, I want to put a bunch of stuff on arms, so like a monitor arm and a Cintiq arm, but it has like a backboard to the table, so I can't put the arm attachments on it. So when I moved to the new place, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get arms for everything. I want everything off the desk. But that means I have to find a place to put this old one, and I have no idea where to put it. My office that I'm in is not that big, and I feel extremely bad junking it, because it's a perfectly fine desk. It's wobbly because it's an IKEA desk, but it's not broken. It's pretty new. It's got like some scratches on it, but it's not that big of a deal. But I can't be bothered to like resell it. It's just such a hassle. So I don't know what's gonna happen. What's my opinion on Procreate? I think it's fine, but I don't like drawing in it. Basically, it feels like I'm fighting the program every time I want to do something, and I am someone who's very much affected by how it feels to work in a program, personally, and so for me, having to constantly fight a program is a nightmare. Everything about my current process has been to minimize the amount of time I'm thinking about the program I'm drawing in. Like, all of my keyboard shortcuts mapped to a single remote, and I don't use any other shortcuts but that. If I do, it disrupts my mental space, and that's fine, because it's like the stuff I don't use. But I pretty much my hand never leaves this remote, because it's got like 8 buttons on either side. My modifier keys, like shift, control, and whatever, in the center. It's the classic Cintiq remote. I only need those buttons, and that's it. That's everything I need to do in a program. No, the tour box thing, I did get like they did ask if I wanted to try it out, but it's so bulky. I like the remote is small because it kind of replicates my old Intuos tablet and how the keys were on the tablet itself. I didn't know if I wanted to get into tour box because it's got a lot of buttons, got like switches and stuff, which is very cool, but I can't be thinking about like moving my hand around to get to buttons. I have to just be like, I'm drawing, I'm not even thinking about moving my hand, like that kind of a thing. I really got into it. But yeah, so Procreate is like, it's a struggle for me to feel comfortable. I've been trying out a bunch of different brushes, a bunch of different things, and sometimes it feels better than other days, but for the most part, drawing in it feels like a chore, and I was not very happy being forced to only use Procreate for a little bit because I was away from home and on my iPad. I basically use every other program. Like, I use Medibang, I use Clip Studio, and all of them are like, okay, it's fine. I really like drawing in Medibang because it's just, I use one brush, I draw. It's basically like Sai. It's got the same feel as Sai, and so I've been really enjoying like sketching in that program. But I don't know, there's just something about Procreate that I just don't like at all. I will say people have made fantastic brushes for Procreate. Like Max's watercolor pack, mwah, chef's kiss. It's brilliant. It's lovely. He did such a great job with that pack. Generally some of the best watercolor brushes I've ever used. Forces me to use Procreate, and I don't like it, but I will for that brush set. But I don't know. I'm a computer. Are we back? Are we good? I actually don't think it was OBS. I think it was someone else. Something else. Someone else. Yeah, no, my whole computer, not computer. Did my computer crash? No. my screens all went black, and a lot of programs had like glitches on them. So I don't think it was OBS. I think it was something else. But yes, hi, we're back. I was like, why did all my screens go black? Maybe. I don't have that many things open. And I did restart before we started, so I don't know. It was an Adobe snap. Yeah, they're mad that, you know, I'm an Adobe simp and yet I'm not using Photoshop right now, not repping them. Yeah. Yeah, I've been giving Sai a lot of love recently. I don't know, it's just something very satisfying about using this program. It's a great program. Love it, love it, love it. Have always found it to be a very comfortable program to draw in. But yeah, anyways, Procreate is what it is. Not super big fan of it, but I will still use it regardless. Somewhat of a question, but do you think investing a lot of time and effort in learning the human body in and out is worth the time if one plans to become a character artist and also illustrate the human body? Yes. I think that the more of an intimate understanding you have of how the human body works, the more informed your art will be. And especially for character artists, it's our main subject matter. It's our main tool. I think a love for how humans move and how the body moves and kind of the kind of miracle of how muscles like interconnect and how they weave with each other. It's like it's a beautiful thing. And I think the more you can understand how beautiful it is, the easier it will be for you to make those kind of more abstract decisions about how do you draw and communicate the human body as it is scientifically, and translate it in a visual way that's interesting. It breaks rules, but it's not bad, right? The decisions you make are purposeful and they're creative. That knowing how the human body works, in order to make those choices, you have to understand the sciences behind it. At least in my opinion. So I think it's a worthwhile investment. I think when people talk about knowing the human body, also, good night, Luna. Thank you for coming. When people talk about knowing the human body, they think it means like learning the name of every piece of like every ligament and like all the tiny like muscles in between. I really don't think so. Like, I think learning muscle names is very important just because it's very useful. You can call things out if you are curious about what that does or what that bump is on that figure. You'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what that is. But you don't need to know the names of a ton of things. You just need to know the names of the important muscles. And when you go from there, you can then start to really emphasize why these muscles are important. What changes does like a flexed arm do to the shape and the silhouette and kind of like the rhythm of the figure? And that's the really important application of it. So yes, I think it's very important. I think it's a great thing to learn. I think it's very fun to learn once you start to really get into it. And you know, there's a reason why I've chosen to dedicate my whole life to drawing humanoids, to drawing characters, because the human body is the most interesting thing. I think that you could dedicate your life to drawing. No shade to environment and prop artists. The stuff that they do is stuff I could never do. But it's not my thing. Not my cup of tea. Oh, is it the one without the S? Wait, try it without the S. But I got it wrong. Commas. Okay, so I did get it wrong. It is the one without the S. Bye, Asida. Oh, no worries. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. For people who do play D&D, do you ever, like, would you ever bring a character from a different campaign to another one? Or is it like every campaign is like a new character thing? Because, like, I love making characters. I have way too many characters that I would love to play. But I'm also kind of like, I think it'd be kind of cool to play the same character with a totally different group, you know? Because, like, I have a much better understanding of them. I know their backstory, their personality has grown with me. But, like, I don't know. Like, I want to play Kaisa with a different group as well and in the future. But I'm also kind of like, what a shame, you know? A campaign lasts for so long and then I don't use a different character. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, if she's definitely tied to the whole setting that she's in. So it'd be hard if it was for any campaign that was not, like, pirate ocean themed, you know? But I think it'd be cool. Currently learning clothes and folds, any tips. Well, you're not gonna get better information than actually looking at how cloth works in real life. So my biggest tip would be the main important things about drawing anything in terms of cloth and folds is knowing what is pulling it, right? Pressure, or not pressure, points of tension. When something is stretched, they're like, if you're holding a piece of cloth, the whole point is that there is a you're holding it at a specific point in space, and everything else is falling away from it with gravity. When you're stretching a piece of cloth between two hands, right, you're holding like a towel and you're stretching it out, the points of tension are where your hands are holding it, right? So there's 2 points of tension and then everything else falls. So when you're holding something, right, and you've got fabric, you've got points of tension here and here. Or I guess I should do it this way. And then you've got the tension of gravity pulling this side of the fabric down, right? When you're pinching something, holding it at the top, there's gravity pulling it down, and that's kind of the main point of tension is up here, right? So this is, where's my so tension. When something is, when it's sewn fabric, right? That tension in a piece of clothing comes from when nothing else is happening to it. Tension in a piece of clothing comes from the seam. It's stretching around the leg. Let's do. So points of tension is going outward. That's where tension is. And then, yeah, so that's kind of like the point of fabric, always, when you're drawing clothes, is you have to know where that, like, force, what force is it, like, what part of it is being pulled due to stretching over the body or falling due to gravity, right? And that's kind of just like the core of everything with fabric. So if you know that, then you can start planning how cloth will shift and change depending on like the state it's in, right? So if you're drawing draped fabric, so if you have fabric going across the shoulder, there are 2 points of tension. It's the shoulders holding up the fabric underneath the drape, right? So all of this is mimicking this motion while also getting pulled down by gravity. So the drape at the bottom, depending on how carefully it's draped, if it's sewn into the fabric or whatever, if it's just tossed over the shoulder, the drape at the bottom, the fabric at the bottom of that drape is going to sink a little bit more. So the curve is a lot deeper, while when it's closer to the point of tension near the shoulders, it's a lot shallower, right? So you get this kind of gradation of gravity, as well as the fabric using both of those points of tension to create like that waterfall of gravity. So when it comes to folds caused by fabric bunching, right? So if you have a knee, we have 2 points of tension, right? This, and then the fabric stretching over the tightest part, which is the knee pushing out, right? So the leg is pushing and pulling on that seam, as well as bunching at the knee. So what happens is, if you look at pants, jeans are very good at this, you'll notice that at the seam for the leg, there is sometimes these radiating seams that come out. And easiest way to tell that is by looking at the inner thigh seam. And then you might have like kind of this valley fold here, because it's literally this fabric creating this like channel, right? And sometimes you might have extra fabric bunching in near the leg, because as this tension is increasing, the knee is also bringing up fabric from the lower leg, because it's like this point which is radiating all of this tension outward, and so it's pulling fabric up from the lower leg. It's pulling fabric from the seam inside and the inside of the leg, and it's collecting fabric at the back of the knee, because where's all that excess fabric going to go? It's going to start to collapse in on itself, and depending on the type of fabric that you're using, or the type of fabric that you're drawing, right? Jean, or denim, sorry, jean is the brand name. Denim, right? Linen, wool, like corduroy, like these fabrics all will bend, and not bend, but they'll wrinkle and they'll shape themselves differently because they're of different thicknesses. Really important thing to know when you're drawing fabric is that all of this stuff will change slightly or drastically depending on the thickness and the type of fabric. And that's why the first thing I said about this whole thing was the best way to learn how to draw fabric is to see it in real life. Once you see how fabric in real life changes and shifts depending on the type, the way it's being stitched, the way it's being held, the type of tension, each situation will either in a very small nuanced way or in a very loud way change how that fabric responds to that very specific situation. Which is why best way to learn how to draw fabric is to find a very specific instance that is relevant to what you're trying to draw. If you're trying to draw a normal t-shirt, a person is like kind of scrunched up, maybe they're hunched over, the best way to learn how to draw a cotton t-shirt is to literally look up photos of people moving in cotton t-shirts. That's how you'll know how cotton itself will stretch, because that's a much more stretchy fabric than, like, say, latex, right? Nail latex, yeah. That latex fabric is not very known. Like, some of it bunches up a lot. You see every little bit of, like, movement, of overlapping of anything. You wouldn't see the same thing in wool, right? You wouldn't see the same thing in a much thicker fabric. So tension is a huge part about drawing fabric, but all of this changes as soon as you change the nature of the fabric, the type of clothing you're wearing, how like if it's stitched, if it's crafted, if it's literally created out of a very specific pattern, right? That's when you start getting into, like, clothes and how clothes are made. That will also change, because there are certain clothes in history that were made to not wrinkle. They were made to not fold because they were crafted specifically to the shape of that person. Easiest way that I think a much more recent example of this was Marilyn Monroe's I don't even know what it's called, birthday dress for the president. Like, they literally sewed that to her body, right? It was supposed to look naked. It was supposed to look as form-fitting as possible. The reason why it doesn't have any folds at all is because it was literally sewn onto her body. Most of her clothes don't look like that, but made of a super sheer fabric, there's no reason why it didn't, like, wrinkle and do all this kind of stuff. But because they were very careful about how they crafted it, they minimized the look, because the whole point was to have this, like, second skin. Compare and contrast that with people that specifically drape fabric across their body. They're creating this whole new shape. They're using different fabric for that. I don't think it was the origin. I actually don't know. Maybe it is. I don't think it is, though. But yeah, so that's kind of like a little bit of a deeper dive into fabric, but at the same time, that's kind of the reason why the first thing I said was get yourself some reference. Because there's no way that I can sit here and describe to you how every single type of fabric works. Easiest way, best way to learn is always to get yourself some reference. So hopefully that helps. Let's see, did I miss anything else in terms of questions? I wonder if we really should have points be how people ask questions. I just assume that people will just ask questions and they won't use the point system, and then it's just kind of like a mess. But it is nice when there's like a cue that I can just read off of, but it's okay. Did I see the Rising Event minion? Is it the rat? The mouse thing? Mockbox, thank you for the tier 1 sub. Thank you so much. When you draw the figure, do you mostly think in gesture, mostly in 3D form, or both? How do you go about it in your head when you draw the figure? Both. Arguably, I think more about 3D form than I do about gesture, which is something I've had to work on. I think a lot about 3D form nowadays because I'm a little bit more confident that I can, like, kind of go back and change the gesture a little bit. But I start initially with thinking about the overall movement of something, and then from there I'll then start thinking about, okay, so inside this, like, kind of wind blown from the back to the front shape, I want her to be leaning forward. Okay, well, in that case, maybe her arms are kind of like bent because I want that kind of sort of coiled shape. Okay, well, now I drew her arms bent, but now I'm thinking about where do I put her hands. Maybe she's pointing them towards her chest, so they're angled in a specific way. You know, once I get to that point, I'm thinking in terms of 3D form. I'm not thinking about gesture as much as I was originally. But I'm a very, like, sporadic person. I'll think about gesture at any point in time, just as I'll think about structure at any point in time. Very random. The way that I draw is very much like I'm winging it at all times. I'm not planning any of these poses. These aren't, like, crafted beforehand, because I think it's fun that way. And so sometimes I'll come up with a pose that's like, this is needlessly complicated and very convoluted, and it doesn't have a very strong gesture, because it's not planned. So sometimes that'll happen. But it's both, for the most part. Have you ever thought of getting an editor to take these streams and turning into video? Yeah, I've talked with Toja about that sometimes. It's just, like, something I was thinking about was, like, okay, so there's definitely a point and a use for a VOD channel, right? And that's something I definitely want to do. But when it comes to, like, stuff like this, where it's, like, tips, talking about small things, I typically get asked the same questions a lot. Sometimes, stream after stream, I'll get multiple instances where I answer a question. And then it's like, do I post, like, 15 answers to the question of how do you draw from imagination? Or do I pick one and then just hope I never have a better response that I could have posted instead? You know, like, are people going to watch the 20th video of me describing, like, you know, how do you draw hair or hands? It's kind of like, okay, I would love to be able to take out these parts if it helps people instead of watching a whole VOD. But it's also kind of like, how do I make that efficient, you know, and how do I make that useful for people to find and see? Because honestly, like, I am not really interested in handling a lot of that myself. If I am going to make videos, they're going to be about much more well-written stuff that I've thought out and done. So when I do think about clips, it's like, okay, maybe it can just be like a highlight on the Twitch channel versus, like, yeah, exactly. Like, I keep changing my answer because I keep thinking about it in new ways. So it's just kind of like, it changes because I change, because I grow up and I have a new way of thinking about it, or a much better way of wording it one day and, like, a worse way of explaining it in the next. So, you know, I guess the best way would probably just be, like, clipping it and then just hoping that, so if one of them clicks, then good for you. But I like trying to explain things in different ways because I think it's useful when someone hears it phrased differently. I've found that often with learning, it's usually not that someone is incapable of understanding a topic or, like, an idea, but more so that it's going to just simply be how someone words the explanation or the answer. And finding a teacher that can explain it in the way that really makes sense to you is great, but oftentimes you're usually sitting somewhere and the teacher is not explaining it in a way that makes sense to you at all. And then you suddenly feel like, am I just dumb? Do I not understand the concept? No. All these concepts have existed for centuries and millennia. There's nothing new to learn about art, and there's nothing new to learn about, like, the craft. Everything's understood, everything's rehashed at all times. All advice is essentially talking about the same thing. You can basically trace all advice back to the same concept, right? It's beyond art, it's beyond life. Everything ultimately is the same lesson. But you reach that in different ways. You reach that through, like, talking about it in a different perspective. Sometimes people work really well in metaphor, which is why I have the whole, you go from, like, learning how to draw letters to learning how to write essays. That makes a lot of sense to some people who think about things more visually. For some people, it's a lot more of a philosophical take, or it's a lot more of a literally, like, a technical perspective of like, what does it mean to draw fabric? It's a lot more than gesture. It's about tension. It's about like gravity and like all these different directions, and you can craft something. You can craft drawing fabric out of just pure like, okay, arrows going this way and arrows going this way, and that's literally the folds that you draw. I can't describe it always the same way, and I can't always describe it in a way that makes sense to everyone. So that's why I keep answering things slightly differently. It's because I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's a new way to think about this. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes I'm like, I come out of it and I'm like, that was a pretty good way to word that answer, and then I just forget. That's the way I think about it. Hey, if we can find a solution to that, that'd be sick. But I'm not a very consistent person in that respect. Took a while to draw this hand, and I'm gonna delete all of it. There's an investment when it comes to courses. And I don't know. I think I learned a lot from the course that I made. It's to the point where like I don't even want to think about that Class 101 course. I feel like I have a much better way of explaining things now. But I also just really enjoy giving people specific answers to their questions, right? Like not general frameworks of like, how do you design a character? Someone comes to me with a very specific question, I'm like, I can answer that. I can tell you specifically how you can design something in this specific situation. Way more useful to you, way better, which is why in the future, if I ever do teaching, I might just end up doing like mentorship stuff. Because I really don't like when I have to generalize something super big so that everyone can get the information. It's so not useful. Twitch is easier in that way, because some people will come in and ask a question. I can ask them to clarify if they need something specific. But it's a smaller environment. It's a lot more concrete. Someone personally is asking me this. Like, it's just, it's useful when I feel like it feels more useful to me, at least, when I feel like it's going to someone very specific who needs this answer. It just, I don't know. I do not envy anyone who's in education. This stuff sucks. Crafting a course, it's gonna teach people stuff. Like, nah. I don't really know if I can do that well, in a way that I feel comfortable with. Because I think it's ultimately just gonna feel really, it's really like too big, too general. Be kind of nice. Like, ultimately, like, I said, how many times are people gonna appreciate the same stuff? But like, ultimately, maybe we can frame it in like, the title of it can be a slightly different question, but it's the same idea, right? And maybe that's not like a terrible thing. I can only imagine like people like, I'm watching a lot of fighting game people because I went to Evo, and a lot of them just do clips from their stream, right? Like Maximilian Dude just basically does clips from his stream, and I'm sure he's rehashed the same topic so many times. He's been streaming for so long and making YouTube videos for longer than that. So I'm sure he's had to rehash the same topic, upload it, all that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's really stopped him necessarily. So maybe it is okay, but is he not? I don't know. I can only imagine he has with all the content that he makes all the time, but maybe he hasn't. I just get asked the same question, so it's like, I don't know if I can. like come up with new things to talk about. Maximilian dude, he's a fighting game person, also just general like games personality commentator. But he does like talk about various topics within like fighting games and games in general. And he has a YouTube channel that's primarily just like clips from his stream. I wonder how he makes new content, but I guess he has a much more broad community of things. Yeah, I imagine it'll just be like something we could do for the VOD channel. Like, unless it's like the point that I make is like we don't do it unless the point that I make feels like a new take or a really nice way to like it's nicely wrapped up, or it's like not succinct because I always talk for too long, but if the point that I make and the way that I say it feels like a fresh take on it or like just a better way to describe it, then we can take it and put it into like a more specific, like its own little short video. Otherwise we just keep it in the VOD and it's totally like separate. We could do something like that and just like be very selective about, you know, that kind of stuff. But I guess we could also section VODs. It would take a lot of work, but maybe we can section VODs so that each section kind of has like, if there's like a question asked that I'm answering, we just section that part and entitle it as the question. So instead of like actually taking clips out of the VOD itself, people can just skip to places where I'm talking in response to something, and then in between is just like I'm just drawing, just doing whatever. We could do that. That might not be terrible, but it is a lot of work because basically someone like you would have to sit there and just watch the whole thing again. Not Twitch, specifically YouTube. YouTube, yeah, I'm not talking about Twitch. Twitch is just what it is. But I would like a VOD channel on YouTube because I know we do highlights on Twitch, which is fine. I think it's good because it's clean, but I would like the VOD channel to be on YouTube. Yeah, let's talk about that sometime. Maybe Sunday I'll be free. I'll let you know. Yeah, I'll brainstorm. Because I might also ask Cole to help out with it, because he has some video editing experience, and I think he wanted some stuff for his portfolio, so we could figure out, like, if there's something we could do in sort of partnership, and work out something. Because I know you could probably help with some stuff, and just, like, manage the VOD channel in general. But, yeah. What do you think stands out on a character design portfolio out of the rest? Um, this is a total personal bias. I love pose and expression sheets. I think pose and expression sheets are so much more interesting than just like a character that's nicely rendered, because nothing tells me that you understand how to design a character more than when you apply them to something. When you give them life through making them pose and move and interact, because there's so much you can learn about a character just from how they choose to stand, how they choose to do basic human tasks. And I love seeing characters doing mundane things, right? I talked about this in my story. I love drawing characters that are just living life and they're totally candid. It's definitely, they're not looking at the camera. It's not like a portrait or anything. I love when, Viedo also closed. I love when characters are just kind of like there and they're doing their own thing, because it shows me like so much about their personality. Why are you so small? Why are you so small? Why do you have to be down here in order to be big? That's weird. Okay. Anyways, it shows me so much more about like who they are and their personality, and I'm interested in that stuff, right? I think you can have a cool character design and that just be it, and that's cool. But if you show me pose sheets and expressions and stuff, that's the part I love about characters, is like how this combination of colors and shapes and design choices and stuff culminate into this specific character. And you have to show me why it matters. You have to show me why they matter. Why, out of all of the character ideas you could have done, all of the different outfits, all of the different hairstyles and faces and whatnot that you could have chosen, this was the character that best fit the bill, that best fit the idea that you had at the very beginning. That's what I care about. So whenever I see like a pose or expression sheet, I get super excited, because it's stuff that I wish I did more of when I was making my portfolio. And it's also the thing that has gotten me all of my jobs ever since I put that in my portfolio. When I did the pose sheet for my character Horangi, and then also when I did the pose sheet for my character Amira. Those two sheets, hands down, has been the main reason why I've gotten hired as a character concept artist. Because before that, I was just an illustrator. To literally everyone in the professional world who even thought about hiring me, I was just an illustrator that maybe sometimes drew characters. After I did that, I was a character designer to them, right? And it meant a lot because I felt like it was the part of my portfolio that I loved the most, was because finally I could see them in motion, I could finally see them doing things. And that's why I like draw characters just doing stuff, is because for once they're more than just a design, they're actually a character. So that's the part I love the most. Funny that you mentioned, I actually clipped some of the advice I think is useful. Like advice. Oh yeah. I mean, people clip stuff all the time. I don't really mind. Adds a little bit more storytelling note. Yes, absolutely. I think that that's the most fun that you can have. Making character is when you give them meaning and you give them a personality, you give them life. I think about it kind of like talking to them. I'm interviewing them as I'm drawing. I was earlier when I was talking about my D&D character while I was drawing this drawing, I was thinking about like, what does this face tell me about her in a way that I haven't thought of yet? Like, she's defiant, she looks like she's gone through some stuff. Like, is that the kind of character, or is that who she is? Is that the person or the child that preceded the person I currently play on my D&D campaign? It might be, it might not be. Maybe the next time I draw her, she has a different face or a different personality. But in that moment while I was drawing it, I was changing small details because I'm like, I think because before she was kind of just looking at you, but then I made her look a little bit more angry. I like moved her eyebrow a little bit. And it's kind of like, I think she is a defiant character. I think more than just being observant. She's not just watching life happen. She's planning how to game the system. She's looking for ways to circumvent the tragedies or even just like the state of her life. And so a character like that is not just gonna watch you. Just like someone with a really strong personality is not just gonna listen to you, right? This whole idea about when you're talking to someone, listen more than you talk. She's absolutely someone who's listening specifically so she can respond. As soon as you're done talking, she's ready to respond. That's the kind of person she is, because that's what she had to be in order to go through like all the things in her life. And so that's the kind of stuff I was thinking about while I was drawing it, because that's the stuff I was still trying to figure out in her character. And I could world build just by writing stuff or thinking about it, but it's so much more fun when you're drawing, because each little minute change of a character's expression or their pose could say so much more about a character than what you could have said in, you know, hundreds of words. At least for me, because I am a very messy writer. So for me, drawing is a meditative process, because I get to talk to these characters, I get to live their life, I get to, for a moment in time, just like live through them, live as them. I can talk to them, I can learn more about them, and then once I'm done with the drawing, I feel like I've had this whole conversation, this like little hangout date where we kind of just talked about like what they cared about and who they are. And I was listening. I listened. The whole exchange is I'm listening to this person describe themselves to me, either through like me deciding what kind of story beats I want, if I wanted to change like something about them, if I wanted to really reinforce like a moment in their life. Sometimes I'll like talk to myself while I'm drawing. One of my favorite things is crafting random dialogue that I think would absolutely be in whatever episode of a TV show that this character would be a part of. And so I'll sit here and just start talking to myself in this like monologue. It's just word salad. I'm just kind of saying things off the top of my head, but you know, moments in which she's she's vengeful, moments where she's like grateful for things or scared. Like, what would she say in that instance? What is she gonna say when my D&D party finally figure out like the actual secret to her versus like all of this like overlaying stuff? Like, yeah, they're about to find out that she has a background in X thing, but they don't know how far that background seeped into her like whole life, and they don't know yet a lot of these threads that the DM has so far put in because I told him about it. They don't know yet how those threads connect, and I need to be prepared for the moment that they do when they get mad at me about it. You know, so it's a fun time. I think it's the most enjoyable part of character design, and you don't get to do that very often when you're just drawing for work, which is why I'm really happy that I've lately gotten back into just drawing for myself. Because I gotta be honest, I can love the work that I do. I can absolutely love the company I work for and the project I'm on. I'll never love it more than when I'm drawing my own characters in my room alone for hours. I'll never be creatively fulfilled working in a job at any company or any studio, no matter how life-changing it is for me to be there with all these idols that I've had, or at least heroes. Frankly, I don't have heroes, but like, you know, I'm never going to be fulfilled doing that kind of stuff, because this is the stuff I really love. I'll sit here and draw for 12 hours straight, just talking to these characters and making up new stories and drawing them in different parts of their life in a way that I can't do at work. You know, at work I'm like, oh, is it 5 o'clock yet? Can I go now? So that I can spend the next 6 hours of my day drawing this character. And that, you know, like, it's just, I think that's what's fun. It's not about designing the greatest costume of all time. It's not about making an iconic character that like everyone's gonna remember, which is obviously very important for people. Like, you know, your whole job at work is to make iconic characters for iconic IPs in hopes that your character is going to be the next big thing that people remember. It's a very big honor to do so. But I gotta be honest, like, greatest joy in my life so far that I've noticed is when I am sitting alone in my room, drawing my little furball D&D character, talking as if I'm her, almost role-playing to nobody, absolutely nobody, because for a moment in time, she's real and she's tangible, and it's like I'm crafting a new friend, but I'm not really friends with her. It's just that I feel like for a moment it's like a tangible connection to who they are and what they do. And it's just cool. It's fun. And whenever people, like, you know, do like pose sheets and expression sheets, I'm like, yes, perfect. This is the moment. This is the moment that you can really live through them, you know? But I also recognize that this is also habits that I've created because there were a lot of moments in my childhood where I kind of was just in a room by myself and I just start talking to myself to keep myself entertained with characters. So it's not the way that probably a lot of people treat character design, but I think it makes it very cool and very fun. You don't literally have to talk to them. It's just how I describe it. How am I feeling so far? I'm feeling okay. Might go for 30 minutes to an hour more. Just kind of draw a little bit more. But yeah, see. I am getting hungry, and I do have food waiting for me in the fridge. So 30 minutes to an hour. But expression sheets and pose sheets were only essential for animation, not concept art. Oh my god, no, dude. Pose and expression sheets are incredibly important for concept. I have single-handedly done turnarounds, pose sheets, expression sheets, the whole shebang, every single job I've had for every assignment. It is essential. Absolutely put it in your portfolio if you do not have it, because you will get hired on that shit alone. People don't know how to do turnarounds, and they're hard because it's not natural, right? But they are so important for production. It's kind of convoluted. I actually think it's very vestigial. A lot of productions don't need to do full turnarounds. They want you to do it anyway because they think that's how it should go. Productions really should change the way that they handle that because no one uses turnarounds legitimately. In concept, right? In games, no one actually uses turnarounds legitimately. But turnarounds are so important for characters. It's not even funny. What's a full turnaround? A full turnaround is front, side, back, 3/4 view. Orthographic, so total front, absolute side, absolute back. 3/4 is 3/4. And often in an A or T pose. A is a lot more popular nowadays than a T pose because the shoulder deformation. But yeah, full turnaround, front, back, side, 3/4. Places like Blizzard, like on the Overwatch team, they do 3/4 front and back. And that's like kind of a shorter turnaround. Or not shorter, but smaller turnaround. I think that should be how everyone does it, because I've not met a single modeler that actually uses the turnaround the way it's supposed to be used, which is 1-to-1 translation, right? Modelers are artists. They can do whatever they want. Some of them are more creative, have more liberty than others, but generally 3D modelers can make a great model out of just a front view, typically. Sometimes. Depends on how complicated the design is. They do not need a full turnaround. I think it is absolutely absurd that we have to do full turnarounds. I think it takes and wastes time, everyone's time, because the modeler will just like start modeling, but you're like having to stop doing stuff so that you can make the turnaround for the modeler to not use. But yeah, no, absolutely important for you to be able to do turnarounds, pose sheets, expression sheets. One of the biggest things that you can have in your portfolio. Put it in if you don't have it. You'll get hired for having it, I promise you. Not that you will absolutely get hired, but if you're going to get hired, it's because you also had that kind of stuff in it, right? Character design portfolios are not just having a good design, it's about being able to be a part of the production pipeline. We are part of pipeline-based industries. We're part of production-based industries if you're going to games and animation and whatnot. So you have to know how to play the part. You're a little pipe in the middle of this whole, like, massive factory of things. And being a team player also means that you know how to communicate visual things to the rest of your team. So turnarounds, post sheets, expression sheets, the best thing that you can have in your portfolio. Does a full turnaround make you popular with 3D modelers? Full turnarounds, maybe not. Doing callouts is very nice. So if you do texture callouts on a turnaround, which means like you have a little note on the side that has like an image of a texture and say like this is rubber and this is latex and this is cotton and this is linen, that's very helpful. If you do callouts for complicated things like, oh, here's a close-up of the bracelet that has like this amulet on it, here's a close-up of this prop that's very complicated and doesn't make any sense except unless you're looking at this concept, that makes you popular with 3D modelers. Full turnarounds, not so much, because they don't really use full turnarounds as much as I think people think they do. Much more important for that kind of stuff to be in animation, although I have heard that even animation people don't use full turnarounds as much as they used to. So just a lose-lose all around. But you will have to do that kind of stuff for your job. So put them in your portfolio. Very important. Not a bad idea to put splash art. The thing about being a concept artist is that it is here's my belief, right? It is an absolute misconception to think that when you're a concept artist, the only thing you're ever going to be doing is sketches. I think it's very popular. Maybe it's an old thought. It's very popular for people that get into concept art or learning about concept art to hear the phrase that you're making ideas. You're an idea generator. You are. But you're also the de facto backup splash illustrator. You're the de facto backup, like, marketing artist if no one else is going to do it. Which often, no one else is. Because they hired you to be the de facto artist for everything. Not always. Bigger companies have it much better handled, but trust me when I say that if you're going to be a concept artist, you're also probably going to have to be an illustrator. You're probably also going to have to be a marketing artist. You're probably also going to have to be helping with stuff like putting together pitch decks. You might be asked to do some graphic design. You might be asked to do some typography. You are the backup artist for a lot of things. So putting splash art stuff in your portfolio is good because it shows that you have range, which, again, you are going to be doing the finished piece for most of your characters. Putting in that render is not a bad idea because it shows that you can do it, and it might mean that this person or this company won't have to hire two people, one person to do concept, one person to do splash, if you can do both, which sucks sometimes, but it does help a lot. I've pretty much, every single job I've had to illustrate, paint, finish, on top of iterate, ideate, pitch concepts and sketches and whatnot. It's all wrapped into one. They all want everything. So yes, very, very important. One of the biggest misconceptions I feel like about the kind of, I guess messaging around concept is like, oh, you're just creating sketches and someone else finishes it. No. No. You absolutely are going to most likely hold the hand of that idea until the end. But yeah. I'd say it's both, right? Style is not always guaranteed when it comes to companies, right? Like, no one imagined Blizzard to come out with Overwatch until it came out with Overwatch, right? Because companies are always kind of wanting to evolve, and you don't know how they're going to evolve. So some companies are very predictable, right? like Bungie is probably not going to come out with a game that's super unlike Destiny for a little bit longer. They're very much like their pipeline, the artists that they have are very much good at that thing, and so they're probably not going to come out with like a super tuned 2D shader like look thing. But you never know. Companies are always looking to increase their profits, and so sometimes coming up with a totally different genre is the way that they do it. And again, no one thought Blizzard would ever make a game like Overwatch because all of their other games are like Warcraft to a certain extent, fantasy based, very much hand painted textures, like all of that kind of stuff. Very different from how Overwatch came out. And so I'd say you never know if a company is totally going to be looking for a different style and you just don't know it. I'd say my advice has always been have the specific style and the specific like requirements for that job position in your portfolio that you send to them, and then have all of your other stuff and all your different styles and genres on a website elsewhere. At this point, pretty much every place only asks for a website. They don't even bother asking for like an actual portfolio anymore. So they're gonna see all your stuff, probably. And if not, most people look at a website anyway. So they'll look at your social media, they'll look at your website, and they'll see that you can do other stuff. And they might say, oh, that's interesting actually. This incubation project that we have cooking up is actually in need of an artist, and it's in this style or very similar, or this artist could absolutely do it. So let's hire them. And that might be the reason you got hired, even if it's not the stuff that the company originally comes out with. So it's hard to say. I'd say do what you can to cater your portfolio to the specific job listing, but always try and experiment with other things if you feel comfortable or even interested in it. Because here's the thing. Don't make art and don't put art in your portfolio that you don't want to do for a job. Like, I think students feel a pressure to, like, put in environments and props and stuff. But if you're like me, and just like doing characters, like, don't put other stuff on your website if you're not interested in doing that for a job. I do have some environment stuff, but it's clearly not as good as my character stuff. And I also don't do environment stuff that much anymore. So if people look at my social media or they look at my website, like, they're gonna see that most of my new stuff is characters, and I do that better. I do that way better. So for them, they're like, okay, well, she has environments, but she's clearly not as good at that as she is with characters. So we know she can kind of do environments if we want her to, but we're probably not going to ask her to do that if we want specialists, right? So there's that. But I've gotten jobs because I've done storyboards in the past and I've put them on my website. I've gotten jobs in the past because I've done like props and whatnot. But if you actually look at my portfolio, it's just characters, because I just like doing characters. If you ask me to do an environment, I will cry first and then I'll do it, because I will do it. I'll do what I'm asked to, but I'm not gonna like it, and it's probably not gonna be as good as you want it to be. But yeah. How have I been? How's the move? I've been good. The move was swift. I'm still in boxes, but overall, new place is good. I'm liking where I'm living now. Yeah. Because the people that are hiring you often are not like totally art people. So to them, UI, UX, all the same stuff, typography, graphic design. You're an artist, you can do that kind of stuff. The amount of logos I've had to make, even though I'm not a logo designer. Oh my god, I'm not a logo designer. Yeah, it happens. Should I learn environments if I don't want to draw it? I'm still in boxes. I'm free. Can come spend Nook tickets on me. Should I learn environment if I don't want to draw it? if you don't want to do it, right, and you don't want to make it, and you don't want to get a job doing it, then you don't have to do it, right? That's the thing. Like, obviously it'd be nice if all of us could draw anything that we wanted at any given point in time, but you could also spend your life doing that one thing that you like doing, and you don't have to change if you don't want to. I'd say it is nice to be more of a cultured person, and in that way a more cultured artist by drawing a bunch of different things and having the ability to do so. I would love to be someone who can draw anything and is comfortable for the most part trying everything. But that's also because I'm interested in that, right? If you don't want to, you don't have to. And you can wait until you feel differently, but you might never. You might never feel the need to do environments, and if you never feel a need, then good for you, right? If you feel that way, but you want to work in the industry, you have to be very cognizant of what that decision, the consequences of that decision, right? So that's always the case. You can make any choice you want. You have to understand the consequences of it, though. Working in the industry sometimes means that we can't be as much of a specialist as we want to be. I'd like for people to be able to do that. Sometimes it's not the case. I know I've gotten the jobs that I've gotten because I've shown some level of variety with the styles that I draw in. But if you're not someone that does that, if you're not someone that has like a level of comfort doing props and monsters and creatures and whatnot, you might not get that same job, right, if you applied to it. Understanding where it limits you, as long as you understand how not doing environments might hinder your progress or might just change the way that your life goes and progresses and your career progresses, as long as you understand that, like, no one cares. Do whatever you want. Do what makes you happy. As long as it's a decision that you made, who cares? Man, I wonder if I should do like a webcam thing. I talk with my hands way too much. Way too much. And I probably should just like have a webcam on. But I don't like showing my face. So you get a little talking avatar instead. People have done that. I think they have just like had a webcam about like looking at their tablet, but then they still have the screen recording. I don't know, man. But no, but like sometimes my hands don't look nice. I've like been able to stop biting my nails in the past couple of months, but it only takes one slip up, then my hands go back to looking like they have my whole life. Speaking of which, I need to paint the other two nails that are bare, because if I don't paint them, I might bite them. Anything I need to look out for while doing pose expression sheets of a character portfolio? Just go ham. I'd say a range of emotions is nice. Like, do a range of poses. You know, go for that crazy pose, and put it next to one where they're just kind of like sleeping or something, you know, like all this stuff is useful because it shows that you have a variety and a comfortability with different expressions, different moods, different emotions. Do dynamic and static poses, right? Someone sitting or standing quietly, like they're not doing anything. Someone jumping or running or something, or fighting. Having a variety of anything is good because it shows that you have range and it shows the full extent of your capabilities. That's what I recommend for absolutely everything. Yeah, I like not wearing masks inside though. I wear a mask when I go out. There's only so much of my own breath that I can breathe in before I'm tired. I feel ya. Yeah. I typically never realize I'm doing it until it's over. I have discovered that I've got into doing so clipping your nails, filing your nails right after you bit them is very helpful, because it's usually, for me, it's usually the fact that it's not like smooth that really irritates me, and then I feel the need to like bite them to maybe like clean it up, but it doesn't ever clean it up actually. So filing your nails, clipping them as soon as they get kind of long is helpful. I realized that I really wanted to grow my nails out, so I started painting them with gel nail polish, which you have to harden with like a UV lamp, or an LED lamp. Very helpful, because I can't easily bite through gelled nail polish nails. They are much more stiff, and I usually have to like peel away the gel before and it's like I'm not getting them professionally done, so it's very cheap. I'd have to peel away the gel first before I can actually bite the nail, and by the point I peel the gel off, then I like repaint it immediately. So I never get to the point where I actually can bite my nails, and that's usually how I've managed to keep my nails long. Also just being busy. If you get really busy, then you like have no time to bite your nails. It's usually when you get bored or something like that you do it. So that's how I've been able to break it, but I do have moments where I go back because I get absent-minded and I'm too lazy to clean my nails up, or I can't find my nail clippers, so I don't know. It's tough. It took a while to even get to the point where I sometimes break my habit, but it happens a lot more often now. A little bit more often than I have longer nails. So it's nice. How's my work social life now compared to as a student? I was a lot more social as a student, for sure, because I had to see people all the time. Now that I actually get to choose who I talk to, I don't talk to anybody. I talk to my roommate, my partner, who is now my roommate, a couple friends on Discord, and work people. But I don't even talk to my coworkers all that much right now, because they're not really the talking type outside of work. So they're way older than me. So I don't talk to anybody, which I quite enjoy for the most part. It'd be nice to have like friends, but I do talk to people on Discord occasionally. It'd be nice to have a friend that I can like physically meet and stuff, but not a lot of my friends don't live close to me. So, you know, my social life is not as vibrant as it was back at school, but I also choose people I genuinely like and that are in my life that I see more often or even talk to more often. So it's a lot better for me, I think, because school is always a little bit of an anxious experience, because I'd be going into a classroom and there's no telling how many of these people like me. Yeah, college was interesting. I don't really know if... I think a lot of people were fine with me. There are a couple people I knew didn't like me, and I didn't like them either. But I also knew there were some people that were like really weird about being in a class with me, so I kind of just like was really quiet at school. Unless, you know, no one was talking to the teacher and the teacher was like, anyone have any questions? Or like, we're doing critique. Does anyone else have anything to say to this student whose work is on the board? And no one talks, and I'm like, all right, I'll talk. I'll say something. You know, could someone else please say something instead of me? Outside of that, I was usually pretty quiet and talked to some people, but not all the time. Yeah, I don't know, people are just really like anxious about giving critique, and that's fair. Maybe the reason why I was so okay with giving critique was for a more egotistical reason, I don't know. But I figured it was like, I'll just start something, maybe other people will like join in or whatever. I'd always find it funny that like, I would give critique for everyone else because no one else wanted to critique their stuff. But as soon as my stuff went on the board, everyone had something to say. And I was like, alright, cool. Glad, happy. So glad that everyone's participating now. Yeah, so that was always fun. Hey, Kevink. Thank you. I'm happy to be back. I don't know if I was a sacrificial lamb or just like, I don't know. Maybe I invited it. But it was okay. Like, I mean, if it got people talking in class, like, I don't really mind. Because, you know, the more they talk in class, the easier it is for them to, like, speak up about stuff, and it was okay. I did just always find it funny, though. I'm like, oh, okay, now you guys have something to say. Very cool, very cool. Do you have advice for drawing clothing in a sense of making them more interesting, detailed? I have made a cleric, barbarian, combo goblin, and become very intimidated by the idea of multiple layers and pieces and concept designs. To know what I should put on them or what goes together. So, I don't know how you dress, but if you think about it just like, I'm putting together an outfit for them. Don't think about design if it overwhelms you. Think about just like, how would this person wear clothes, you know? Like, if they're a goblin, right, do you think they'd get cold frequently? Do you think they are like, because I have a goblin in my D&D group, and she doesn't wear any armor. She just wears like a scrap, because she is a tank, and before anyone gets a hit on her, she's killed them with her fucking anchor. So like, she doesn't wear armor because she's just not in the mindset to wear armor. We actually just bought her armor because her AC was so low. But, you know, you have a cleric, barbarian, goblin. So the barbarian part of them maybe gives them a sense of recklessness. Maybe it makes them this very, like, kind of almost, maybe they enjoy the thrill. They're kind of a thrill seeker, right? Barbarians are all about raging, right? So maybe because of that, they don't like the mess of wearing a ton of stuff. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them feel super bound in like tight clothing. So they wear loose stuff or they don't wear anything at all, right? So you have a cleric then. Okay, well, a cleric sometimes, right? Depends on what kind of cleric. Sometimes a cleric wants to showcase that they belong to a certain holy faith or a certain like denomination. So that's why they would wear symbols, right? Holy symbols, why they'd wear fabric, why they'd wear like any of this stuff. So you have to think, okay, so a barbarian that maybe likes to wear looser stuff, not restrictive things, and a cleric who wants to show that they belong to this faith. Okay, well, so you could give them super, really loose armor, like, it could literally just be like a chest strap, right? But they have the emblem of their cleric, of their faith on that strap or on their pauldron. It's made of leather, and super breathable, super open, whatever. Or loose fabric, right? Maybe you give them drapes and stuff. Maybe they actually look more cleric than they do barbarian, but they're just really bulky. Or in a way that clerics typically were phrased as, like, they would have the clerics be really heavy armor, right? Because that's like a whole thing, we have a heavy armor proficiency. Like, maybe they are all armored up, you know? They have this tunic that has the colors and the symbol of their holy house, but then their arms are armored. And then you think, okay, what kind of armor would my goblin wear? You know, like, would they wear plate? Is there plate made for goblins in your world? If not, maybe they can just wear chainmail, because you can just cut that shit up and it's whatever, right? So okay, maybe they wear chainmail and then they have like gloves, because they use like a pretty old, like kind of, it's got like splinters all over, like this really old weapon or whatever. So they wear gloves, maybe, or they don't. Maybe they can wear half gloves because they like having their fingers free and it's, you know, a choice, right? Like, you can start to build a design out of basically just figuring out how to dress them. And you don't have to think too deep about design until after you've decided, here's basically what they wear, right? They wear a trench coat, or they wear, like, a leather strap and, like, shorts, or a skirt or something, you know, or a kilt. Like, you just decide what it is, and then you think about, okay, well, I know what they wear, but there are so many different ways that a trench coat can look. There's so many ways that a jacket or a shirt can look. And then you can start looking around at references and saying, okay, well, I see this jacket has really big lapels. I like the idea of these, like, big shapes by the head. Maybe I'll give him, like, big, a big collar or something like that. And then you start building it slowly, and then eventually you'll kind of start to think about design and clothing in the same way. Start thinking about how to create and dress something and dress a character, but you're still designing it, right? When I'm drawing a character, I'm thinking simultaneously about the silhouette and the kind of medium, big, small shape breakup, and I'm thinking about the balance, and I'm thinking about maybe just like what they're wearing, are they wearing a jacket or a shirt or whatever. At a certain point, all those things just become one big puzzle that you create. But if you're just starting out and it gets overwhelming, you can just literally start with, hey, I'm gonna pretend I'm my goblin. What am I feeling like wearing today or forever? Maybe you never change your clothes. Like, what am I feeling like I would wear every day to the point where I never change my clothes, or if I did, like, this is still the thing I chose to wear as of right now, who I am right now. It could be that they're wearing old clothes that they have had for ages, but like maybe your cleric no longer goes to, like, doesn't believe in that faith anymore, so it's all like ripped up and it doesn't even look like normal clothes. Or maybe they take really good care of their armor and they're very meticulous and all that kind of stuff. So, a lot of ways to really break it down. I think easiest way in my mind to get started with it is just to think about it like clothes. And it's a great place to start. Because ultimately that's like one of the more basic parts about character design, is literally what clothes is your character wearing. Because, okay, this is getting into something else too. One of the things that I think is it's a trend in character designers, students of character design, people that do character design for a job or whatever. This is a trend that I see that I'm sometimes like, okay, this is cool, but the implications of this are kind of concerning in a very, like, loose way, right? And it's the whole character design trend of, like, basing a design off of an object is like a challenge that some people do. And I think some people create some really cool designs from it. And I'm not gonna shade anyone for doing it or being a part of it, but here's the thing. There are aspects of character design which is very much based on just the design, right? A lot of these characters have the same shape or the same silhouette, or they have a big hook, right? They literally have like a big weapon, or it's a small character with a big partner or whatever. Like, all these things are design choices. But if you actually ask someone to come up with a story for the character that they designed off of a lamp, like, they're not thinking about story. And that's fine. Not every character design has to be based on something or go into a project. But the problem is, I think it sometimes makes people think that in order to make a good design, you have to make, like, big shapes, nice silhouette, you have to think about it in terms of forms and shapes, when also character design is just, what is this character going to put on today? It's not really any more complicated than choosing what you wear on a day-to-day basis, but the added complexity is this also has to visually represent them. We're working in a visual media, a design media, so everything has to be purposeful. And that means the size of the lapels, the length of the collar, or the length of the sleeves, or, the patterning on the coat, very specific to this character. We're not just putting him in any coat, we're putting him in this coat specifically because it has something to say about him, about his backstory, about his world. We're putting all this dirt on him for a specific reason, right? That's the part of applied character design. Very often the stuff that you do at work. And whenever I see people that do, like, super general character design challenges, it's always fine. It's always cool to see what people come up with when it's just shapes. But also I think people, when they think about character design, they get too overwhelmed by the idea of like, I have to be making cool shapes. I have to be making these big, like, crazy designs. Sometimes a good design is just like a character that makes sense, or a character that feels like they fit in the world that you designed them for. Characters don't need stories, but maybe the story that they could tell is interesting, right? A one-off design that someone makes for fun doesn't have to have a complicated, deep world building behind them. But you can also kind of look at a character and you're like, I feel like this character has had like a really hard life, and I feel like I'm getting the idea in the sense that they kind of are like a more mystical person, and I'm getting a sense for what the world is like, and they're not crazy big decisions made for the sake of having a cool silhouette. They're decisions made because this character embodies something, a moment in time, a collection of memories, a collection of stories and backstories and histories and relationships. Characters can be that, or they can be big shapes, or they can be like, you know, just a nice collection of colors and whatnot. Like, character designs can be anything. But I do wonder sometimes when people do the character design challenges, if it warps their idea of what it means to design a character. Because it's a vast genre. You can do anything with it. But I also worry that for some people it makes them feel as if they have to do this stuff. They have to make a small character with a big weapon. If you make like a short little Lolita girl, you have to give them a big dude, right? And yeah, you can make this cool character that you based off of a lamp fit into something, and I think that'd be great. But the intent of how you design a character also reflects upon them, right? If you designed a character just so that it would reflect the same loop and the same, say some people do perfume bottles. They do perfume bottles, right? Because they're very pretty. And you have like flowers and like this kind of transparent thing on them, and it's all very gorgeous, right? But sometimes it almost just looks like a very avant-garde fashion piece, which is cool. So warping it into a story is kind of like, okay, well now suddenly everything kind of has to be a little bit weird and avant-garde, and not a lot of people are willing to go that far, right? And I think it'd be great if people could take that lamp character or that perfume bottle character and make it into a bigger story, because I think a lot of those characters would make really interesting stories, really interesting worlds. But they were never designed to fit into anything. They were designed to look like this object, because that was the point of the challenge. And again, the challenge is not the problem. It's what the challenge might teach people about what it means to make a good character design. A cool character is a good character design. A boring character can also be a good character design. No one's looking at, like, pick an animated TV show. No one's looking at... I'll just do the ones that I know. No one's looking at Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender and being like, this is the most cool, like, crazy shaped character ever. Because he's not, right? That's not the point of him. The point of him is he's supposed to evoke kind of this monastical, not nomad, but they're very much based on Shaolin monks, right? That's like the whole point of his character, is that he's supposed to be the core example of airbenders for this show, because there are no other airbenders. So his design has to be the most kind of central culmination of what the airbender aesthetic is, which is very much Shaolin monks and very much loose, because he's an airbender, and so everything is very flowy in a way that water is not, right? It's movement and its flow and its colors and its cloth in a way that waterbenders are not, right? And that's a distinction between those two different elements, along with all the other ones. So Avatar is not necessarily like crazily well designed in terms of like, they're not gonna match up to the perfume bottle character, you know? Like, they're not gonna be as cool as that. One can argue it's because it's an animated show and you don't want to do anything too complicated, but again, the point still stands. They're not doing any of that because that's not the point. They're not trying to make characters that are crazy, unique, and interesting, because the point of it is that you're supposed to look at this character and understand where they came from. You're looking at this character and you understand the world. It adds to your understanding of the story. And so that design is informed by that purpose. And when people design characters just based off of objects, just to base it off of an object, the purpose isn't there. You can retrofit one. But I do sometimes wonder if people start to feel trapped because they feel like their designs aren't cool enough. It's not cool enough to match up to this perfume bottle that they saw on Twitter. Because you really don't have to make anything crazy. I honestly think a lot of my characters are not that interesting to look at because I don't draw them in their crazy outfit that I design them in. I draw them in like tank tops and stuff. Because like, I'm not worried about how this character is dressed. I might give them a new costume because I think it's cool. Right? I like drawing new costumes. But like, I'm never too worried about like, oh, is this a cool shape? Because I'm more worried about like, hey, do they look comfortable sitting on the sofa that I am thinking about them sitting on? You know, do they look pensive or scared or you know, whatever? Because that's what I care about. And I never give them like crazy cool costumes because honestly, my brain too tired for that stuff after work. I do that at work. I'm not gonna do it at home. This is one just big, long, rambling mess of me saying, your characters can be as cool and as interesting as you want it to be. Or it can be as basic, and you can start from just making clothes that this character would wear because you think that, you know, based on your closet or maybe clothes that you've seen, this is just something that they might pick up, and that's cool, right? I would be reticent to say that it's lazy. I think it just is a form of design. It's a way of designing a character, right? Like, sometimes characters are just meant to be cool. And here's... I'm gonna piss off some people. Here's my problem with Genshin Impact. Genshin is cool. It looks cool. Some people might not like it, and that's fine, right? This is not a matter of like whether or not you like it. It's more of a matter of like the intent for a character's design, right? And Genshin Impact's purpose is to sell their characters, to sell character packages. Genshin Impact's character design is cool. It isn't necessarily a product of applied world building or applied storytelling. They are based off of regions, they are based off of powers, but they are not necessarily tied to a through line with each individual region. It's not hard to make a character look like they're more Chinese than Japanese inspired. And a lot of Genshin characters are designed to have a motif, right? This character is a samurai, or this character is a yokai, or this character is, you know, an archer from a more western region, right? Like, that's the point of Genshin Impact. Do I like it? Sometimes. But I also recognize that that's not the point of Genshin Impact's character designs. They're not trying to tell me more about the world, specifically through how many gold pieces are on this character. Does that mean they're more rich or not? Ningguang looks exactly as elaborate as, like, the homeless god. Granted, what's his name? I don't even know his name anymore. The one with the blue, I'm sure there's a homeless character somewhere in Genshin Impact. They all look the same, right? They all look equally as rich, right? Because, like, the point is, gold accents look cool, you know? And they're not trying to sell you someone who looks poor, right? Who doesn't have access to, like, cool materials, or because of the weather in the Russian place, I forget what it's called, they don't have access to certain dyes. That's stupid. He just, like, he looks like that because he's, like, a morally gray character and red is, like, an accent color for him. It looks cool. I don't know why his belly's showing, but I definitely tried to pull his character in the gacha. Like, you know, I am not, like, blind to the fact that this character was not designed to do very much more than be attractive and cool and interesting. And that's fine. That's the point of Genshin Impact. It is an incredibly specific reason to design a character, though, right? It is an incredibly specific way to see the value in a character. Not saying it's good or bad, it just is a way. Just as seeing a perfume bottle as a good design is a way to evaluate the, like, there's another word for value, but I don't know it. The inherent value of a design. The cooler, the more details there are, the more interesting it looks, the better the color palette, like, that's the value, and that gives it kind of like, oh, is this a good design or not? You know. Applied design, in a different way, is like, I'd say, like, I recently watched a video on Game of Thrones from Bernadette Banner, which is a fantastic video. If you ever have the chance to sit down and watch a 40-minute video about how Game of Thrones is the most historically accurate historical fantasy show of all time, you should watch it. Bernadette Banner does a fantastic job of explaining how applied character design works. Because I watched it randomly one night. Sorry, I'm not even drawing anymore. I watched it randomly one night, and I had like a brain blast because I was like, this is the perfect video. Everyone must watch it. I need everyone to watch it. To the point where I was like, maybe I should make a video talking about how everyone should go watch this video, because it is the perfect example of what it means to apply characters, right? Applied character design is a product of, and I'm not saying that as like a term, it's not a term, I just made it up, but when your character is the product of a world, that's what it looks like. It looks like every decision and choice that was made for this character was made because of where they live, their life story, their background, the state of their like socioeconomic status, like all of these different parts of the world feed into the character. And that's like the whole point of, like, that was the through line for how that, like, yes, okay, that's like the whole point of Game of Thrones character design, right? Is that it is historical fantasy, and they took that and ran with it, and they did an excellent job. One of the best jobs, I think, of any show that has come out recently. And it's because, yeah, and for all the reasons that she describes, right? This stuff might completely pass over someone who doesn't know anything about fashion history. Might completely pass over someone who has, like, no idea what it means for certain dyes to come in and out of fashion, for certain fabrics to come in and out of fashion, what it means to see a fabric on someone and how that kind of tells you about their socioeconomic status. If you don't know any of that stuff, it flies over you, right? Game of Thrones has great costumes, just in general. They're great designs. But what makes them special, what makes them interesting, what makes them truly pieces of art is how much story you can learn from a character just by looking at how they've applied the world to them. That is another way to design characters. And that is not what the perfume bottle is trying to do. That's not what Genshin Impact's trying to do, and that's fine. But there is so much flavor and nuance to character design that I sometimes wonder, are we missing out on it? Are some people missing out on it because they look at all of their favorite artists on Twitter or Instagram and they're all doing this bandwagon stuff and they think, oh, my characters have to look like that. If I want to be a character designer, I have to make, like, cool looking characters. I don't know how to shape design. I don't know how to design good silhouettes or, like, good color palettes, and I have to do that. Oh god, okay, like, how do I even do that? It's so abstract, you know? Like, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And character design can just be as simple as, like, I feel like this character will wear jeans instead of shorts, you know? It can be as simple as, I think they're feeling hair down, natural color, because they're not super adventurous. And maybe it'll hide their face a little bit because they're anxious, you know? And then you get, you know, more fantastical with it, and then it gets kind of weird. It's cool. Character design's open. It's great. Love all these different ways to design characters. I wish people would be more, like, open to trying stuff out and not letting themselves get too wrapped up in, like, what it should be. There are ways to apply character design for different things, for different industries, different jobs, all that kind of stuff. What matters, though, is that it fits the purpose, right? Fits the function. It doesn't have to be a product of world building. I think there are a lot of designs that aren't, that are really cool. It could be, and that's really cool too, right? So that's just my long rant about character design. This probably has nothing to do with the original question. I'm so sorry. And I'm so sorry to anyone who's like watching this and being like, why isn't she drawing? Because I talk too much. That's why. But I just been feeling very passionate about this because like I always see people who like want to get into character design, they get really wrapped up in like what they should be doing. And I think I have gone through that too, and I still kind of go through that. But ultimately what I end up doing is just being like, why does it matter? As long as I'm making it for this thing, I'm doing it with the purpose of fulfilling whatever this project is, or whatever this challenge is, or whatever, you know, like as long as it fits the purpose, it's doing what I want it to do, then who cares, right? Who cares if it's just cool? Who cares if it's designed with purpose? Form fits function, you know? Form fits function is boring sometimes. Like, you know, Last of Us was an incredibly influential game, but there are only so many years of unwashed white men that I can take, you know? Like, there are only so many years of plaid, unwashed white guy with dirt all over him that gets cool. But I'm never gonna say that the character design in Last of Us is bad, because it's not. It fits Last of Us in a way that is genuine. They designed those characters to look the way that they do. They took a lot of care in how they're shown in the game. Just as Genshin Impact is cool. I'm not gonna deny it. I don't like a lot of the designs of Genshin Impact, but I have been drawn to a lot of these characters because I'm like, yeah, looks sick, looks great. I'd spend money on that, you know? And I hope people that get into character design don't think that that's like it. You know, they have to do cool designs, or they have to find a reason for every decision. You don't have to. You could. And I think it's good if you're comfortable with all of it. But if you like just putting your characters in t-shirts and jeans, then cool. Just know that if you want to start doing stuff in fantasy, jeans are not a thing that existed before, like, I think they existed, like, in the 20s? 1920s? They started... Denim was like a thing for work pants or something like that. It's been around for a lot longer than people think. But like, you're not gonna have machine sewn stuff, you know, prior to a certain era. And how does that impact your character? And how does that impact design, right? Those are cool, interesting questions to ask. But you don't have to answer them if you don't want them. There are some questions, and I think after that, then I will call it for today. Can you elaborate on what through line means in the context of character is a cohesiveness? So, yes, essentially, right? Do all these characters feel like they belong in the same project? There's an abstract through line there. Do all the characters in this group or club or faction feel like they all belong together? There's a through line there. Let's talk about let's see. Let me grab this original cast of Overwatch. Not the new designs, but the original ones. I don't know if there's really like a solid picture of all of the original people. Maybe not. Okay, well, so it's a little weird because Overwatch is a little bit crazy, but just for the sake of demonstration, I guess. Well, oh, it's such a small picture. Anyways, one of the core through lines for Overwatch design-wise is the 45-degree angle. They loved putting this shape absolutely everywhere. They put it absolutely everywhere. Everywhere they could. They put it everywhere. This was a core part of how they designed a lot of their environments, how they designed a lot of their how they designed a lot of their props, their weapons, their characters. This was the through line for the entire game, was this idea of beveling that was at a 45-degree angle. Absolutely everything had this look to it. Big, small, whatever. And that was a way that they made every design, even though it was a really big game with a lot of different characters. That's how they made them all feel relevant to each other. And that's just one way, right? A lot of characters in Overwatch have a really strong color scheme. A lot of them have gradients, right? There's an idea of the through line being everyone is pseudo-tech. Some of them are far more tech-based than others, but for the most part, like, the armor is techified. It has technology in it. It has like some kind of LED or whatever. Even the cowboy has like a mechanized, like, you know, breastplate, right? He could just have been wearing armor, but that's against the through line. The through line is kind of this I call it chunky sci-fi, because like, if you look at this knee pad, right, it has such a wide top up here, and it has such strong shapes. If you look at most sci-fi things, they're not like we're gonna compare it to Cyberpunk 2077, because Cyberpunk, not necessarily the same genre, but it's sci-fi, right? Different sci-fi though, for very obvious reasons. We're gonna cover them regardless, because this is my stream. Ooh, that's a big picture. Why couldn't the Overwatch one been this big? So we're gonna look at this Cyberpunk poster. Cyberpunk's through line is also sci-fi, but in a very different way. Because this sci-fi has, oh my god, so many little details. Like, look at these little things up here, and like this big silhouette read. There's so much detail in this area, does not make a single bit of difference in that silhouette read, right? These little dingy, like, you know, whatever these are, in an Overwatch character, these would be massive, right? Because they need to break the silhouette. That's the whole idea of Overwatch, was that all of their characters had these massive, really fantastic silhouette breaks. Not to say that Cyberpunk is worse, but just that Cyberpunk is a different fantasy. It's a different way to approach sci-fi. It's a different way to approach designing a very similar tech, right? Very form-fitting, very, very, like, thin, very whatever. Yeah, Genshin Impact is also very much in a very similar way of, like, or I don't know what, Genji. Oh, you mean Genji, the actual character. Yes, Genji, absolutely. Even Genji, though, he's got a strong silhouette, though. Genshin Impact is one of those games that doesn't have, just to continue the thread, Genshin Impact is one of those games that doesn't have super crazy strong silhouette reads. It's, they have silhouette breaking shapes, but they're not like crazy iconic, in the same way that Overwatch is. Not to say that Genshin Impact is bad character design versus Overwatch good character design, it's just that silhouette means and has a different value in that game versus this game, right? So that's what I mean by through line. It can be anything. It can be as simple as they're all the same color, to they you want 3/4 view, Montezuma. They could be all the same color. They could all have the same uniform. they could all have the same design philosophy. All of those things are through lines. Could be anything. And especially if you're trying to design characters within a specific faction, the more distinct that through line is, the easier it is for someone to understand, like, okay, these characters are together. They're a group. When it comes to a project, 45-degree angles in Overwatch is how they created a through line for a lot of their characters and their environments. It's not the only one, but it's one of the strongest ones that came out when they originally designed the game. So that's a through line. It is cohesion, but it's also just the underlying kind of pushing force for something. It pushes your design philosophy, it pushes the design forward, it groups it together with everything else. That's what makes everything come together. So that's kind of what through lines are. They can be anything, abstract or not. Let's see. What else? How many tips about adding texture in painting? Instead of copy pasting texture when you're painting, I would recommend using textured brushes. You don't need like super textured brushes, but using that brush to kind of like add a little bit of color grain. Some of them have color dynamics, right? Even just a little bit of a speckle on something can add texture. But often texture is two things. It's physical texture, so it's like literally like speckling and like noise or whatever. And it's color texture. Slight variations in tone and hue and whatnot in a surface can add texture to something. Doesn't mean it's good or that you should use it all the time, but it's just, that's usually how it works. So instead of like copy pasting a texture from Google, that's what I would recommend doing if you want to put texture in stuff. I mean, honestly, like, Game of Thrones is good. Game of Thrones is a great example of that, really, honestly. First time I ever saw that, I'll just answer it because it's pretty quick. First time I ever saw that happen was Lord of the Rings. I remember I was watching the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, and the seamstress, the costume designer, was talking about how on the inside of the elven coats that the men would wear, they stitched in elven prayers. On the inside hem of the background characters, the extras in the back of the screen. Totally wasted work. But oh my god, does it open your eyes to so much about who they are. Cause like there is something incredibly intimate about stitching, hand stitching silver thread onto the interior side, the interior hem of a coat. For, you know, I mean, there's something to be said about the fact that it was for the men specifically. They didn't talk about if it was for women as well. So it's symbolic for the men to wear coats which had blessings and prayers stitched on the inside of the hem, facing them. A lot of implications with that fact. And the seamstresses did not have to put that in, right? Obviously, it's a waste of time to not put stuff in when you can't see it on screen. But in the chances that you could, right, in the times that you know about it, it's great. It's a great detail. Because it tells you so much about, like, who these people are, what they care about, and how these seamstresses within this elven world sent their warriors out to fight these great battles, and they cared enough to send them with prayers, hoping they'd come home. Like, that's a great short story of a much larger culture, right? And I mean, there's more. Like Game of Thrones, a thing that Bernadette Banner mentions in the video is, for anything that was hidden from the viewer, they would machine stitch. But anything that was visible to people, they would hand stitch. If you've never hand sewn something, that takes so much time, even when you're good at it, even when it's all you do. They had thousands of costumes per season. That was an explicit design decision that they made because they cared about the application of the costumes and what it meant to the greater world. Game of Thrones, as she talks about, Game of Thrones takes place prior to any kind of technological revolution. So there is no machine sewing. Not even magic really does it. So magic doesn't do it. Machines don't do it. Have to do it by hand. Who gets to afford finely handcrafted things? Everyone kind of gets to, right? When you're destitute or in the lower class, you're forced to craft your own clothes, forced to fix them yourself. Higher ranking individuals have the ability to not only get handcrafted clothes, but it's tailored to them. It's made in materials that are extremely expensive, made in fabrics that are probably imported, with motifs that are extremely time-consuming to do by hand. So any character that's wearing exotic fabrics, exotic patterns, wearing richly dyed clothes, anyone who's wearing complicated, handcrafted, hand-tailored clothing, it says a lot about them. So, these two shows are movies, the Lord of the Rings movies and the Game of Thrones show, great examples of this, right? And there's a lot of others. I won't say that they're the only ones. It's just that they do it well, and it's for a fantasy world, right? And that just shows you, these are real world things. Historically, these have happened for centuries. We know these things. It's just human. So it's sociological, right? It is the history of humans that we do these things. This is the logical, I guess you could describe it as logical design, right? Because everything is based on something else. Based on context. The reason why I love her videos so much is because it gives you literal examples of what it means to design logically, what it means to apply world building to your characters. Because again, not only are these costumes fantastic pieces of art, right? They're well designed beyond anything else in a lot of other shows right now. But they're also just incredibly rich in world building and story. Incredibly rich in just both visual texture and story texture. I don't know how to describe it. It's just it gives you the grit and the functionality and the realness of hey, you're in this world. Nothing will take you out of a world faster than a costume that clearly doesn't fit, right? And sometimes that's the point. Game of Thrones was inviting you into their world. They wanted to make sure that everything fit. That's why they took the time to hand sew thousands upon thousands of costumes across the entire show. They never slipped up. The costumes in the last bit of the show, still just as good as the beginning. Say as much as you want about the story, the costume department never slipped. And that is not only an impressive feat of craftsmanship, not only a commendable feat in just labor, but the designs were impeccable because it did more than just be cool. It did more than give a character a neat costume for that scene that matched the tone. It literally gave them the right clothes for the job, the right clothes for the story. And when you learn about this stuff, it's cool, right? You feel like you understand them better. And that's the fun part. Just because for the vast majority of people who watch these things, who read, look at your stuff, they're never going to know that you put in all this work, right? They're never going to know that you did all this stuff, put in all this story. Thank you for coming. And thank you for the bits. But when someone does find out, when someone figures out that you did put in all this effort, everyone wins. Everyone gets that sense of just wow, okay. Yeah, it's deeper than I thought it was. And that was my moment with Lord of the Rings, right? That was my moment with that hand-stitched prayer on the back hem of that elven background character's coat. Was sitting there and realizing they did stuff they didn't have to. This was an extra choice. And it means more than just, that that's a cool design thing. Like, it's literally just a labor of love. It's like literally the designer saying, I love this idea. I love this thought enough for me to trade hours of my life to make it happen. And I respect that on a creative level. I respect that on a human level. And I respect that on like a fan level. Cause like them doing that when they didn't like have to means that whenever I watch Lord of the Rings and I watch the scenes with the like, you know, any elf in the shot, right? I'm thinking like, do they have prayers? Is this like a different like do they not do that? Like, what do they do? You know, do they go to war often enough that they have to? Or have they stopped and it's just all about like peace and stuff and they're totally fine with just like being really fancy and elaborate at home? They don't need all these prayers like stitched into their coat. It's a great thing. But now I live with it every single time I look at an elf. I'm like, did someone care about you enough to give you a prayer on the inside of your coat? That says so much about them, says so much about the life that they lead. It's just good. And I think when you find projects like that, it's very fun. It's very cool. But again, not necessarily better than other designs. Not necessarily better than something that you could have made just by basing it off of like an object or whatever. But I think it's cool. It's cool when you get to do it. It's cool when you learn about it. And it's just an example of how nuanced and interesting character design can be. But that's enough from me because it's 11:30-ish. And I'm gonna go to bed. Ish. Probably gonna watch a cat video or something. But yeah. Thank you everyone for sticking around even though I didn't draw very much at all. Even though I stream longer than I normally do. I didn't draw very much at all. But thank you very much anyway for sticking around and listening to me talk and letting me talk. I've missed you all lots. And I'm very happy that people came and asked questions. It was very nice of all of you. But yeah, Friday stream should be back. Hopefully with a less echoey setup next time because I'll maybe have my desk put together. Yeah, but thank you for coming. I hope we get to make it next time. Sorry that I'm leaving right now. But yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for hanging out. I love you all so very much. And hopefully I will see you guys all next Friday.